The universe operates on principles we understand: physics, chemistry, the fundamental laws of cause and effect. Starfleet has cataloged thousands of spatial anomalies, charted nebulae that defy conventional science, and encountered life forms that challenge the very definition of existence. But what happens when something, or someone, appears who operates by rules that have no place in a galaxy governed by reason and diplomacy? When a man forged by war, enhanced beyond human limitation, and bound by no code except his own survival materializes in a realm where peace is the Prime Directive, the question becomes not whether violence has a place among the stars, but whether the stars are ready for what violence truly means. The Enterprise D was conducting a routine survey of the Argolis cluster when sensors detected the subspace distortion. Lieutenant Commander Data's fingers moved across his console with characteristic precision, golden eyes narrowing infinitesimally as readings scrolled past. "Captain, I am detecting a quantum fissure opening 300,000 kilometers off the port bow. The energy signature is inconsistent with any known phenomenon." Captain Jean-Luc Picard rose from his command chair, tugging his uniform tunic into place. On screen, the view screen shimmered, replacing the star field with an image of space itself tearing open. Violet and crimson energy crackled along the edges of a wound in reality, expanding rapidly. Picard had seen temporal anomalies, subspace ruptures, even the Borg's transwarp conduits, but this was different. The fissure pulsed with a rhythm almost biological, as if the universe itself was breathing. "Shields up," Picard ordered. "Red alert." The klaxon blared through the ship as the fissure convulsed. Something emerged, not a ship, but a figure, tumbling through the void in a flash of displaced energy. The rift collapsed behind it with a thunderclap of released subspace pressure that rocked the Enterprise despite their distance. "Transporter room 2, emergency beam out," Picard commanded. "Get whoever, or whatever, that is aboard before they suffocate." In the transporter room, Chief O'Brien's hands flew across the controls. "I'm trying, sir, but there's interference from residual quantum radiation. The patterns, unusually dense. Compensating." The transporter beam caught the figure just as their trajectory would have carried them into the Argolis asteroid field. The familiar shimmer of materialization began, and immediately went wrong. The figure crashed onto the transporter pad in a shower of sparks, the beam stuttering as if struggling to reconcile what it was trying to reassemble. O'Brien stumbled backward as his console overloaded, forcing an emergency shutdown. When the smoke cleared, a man lay motionless on the pad, clad in segmented armor the color of gunmetal and burnt orange, a helmet with a single eyepiece covering half his face. Security teams arrived within seconds, led by Lieutenant Worf, phaser rifles trained on the unconscious stranger. The Klingons' tactical instincts screamed danger. The armor alone, battle-scarred, purpose-built, decorated with no insignia or allegiance, marked this as a warrior. But the way the man had survived unprotected space, even for those brief seconds, suggested something far more concerning. "Sickbay," Worf growled into his communicator. "We need Dr. Crusher. And bring a security containment field." When Slade Wilson's consciousness clawed its way back from the void, his enhanced nervous system cataloged his situation in microseconds before he opened his eye. Restrained, lightweight materials, likely energy-based. Medical equipment, unfamiliar designs, no recognizable technology. Voices, multiple hostiles, various positions, armed. His healing factor was already compensating for the cellular damage from unprotected spatial exposure, but something felt wrong. Slower, like his entire body was operating through interference. He opened his eye. A woman with red hair and a blue medical uniform stood beside him, holding a device that hummed softly as it passed over his body. Behind her, a massive humanoid with a ridged forehead kept one hand near a weapon on his hip. Others in matching uniforms, gold, red, blue, stood at various stations around what was clearly a medical facility. "You're awake," the woman said, her tone professionally calm. "I'm Dr. Beverly Crusher. You're aboard the Federation starship Enterprise. You're safe." Slade's tactical assessment continued automatically. No visible projectile weapons. Energy-based sidearms, possibly directed energy. The big one was the primary threat, combat-ready stance, disciplined. The others were scientists, technicians. Minimal threat unless the technology was more dangerous than it appeared. Where am I? His voice came out rough, the helmet's vocal modulator damaged. As I said, the USS Enterprise, Crusher replied, lowering her medical tricorder. We found you in space near a quantum fissure. You're extremely fortunate to be alive. Your physiology is remarkable. I've never seen cellular regeneration like this outside of. What galaxy? Slade interrupted, testing the restraints. Energy field, definitely. Not painful, but firm. Crusher exchanged glances with the large officer. You're in the Alpha Quadrant. Federation space. Does that mean something to you? It meant he was nowhere near Earth. Nowhere near home. The quantum fissure. He remembered now. The mission had gone sideways. Enemy forces had some kind of experimental weapon, something that punched holes between dimensions. He'd been caught in the discharge when it detonated. And now he was, wherever this was. I need to speak with whoever's in command, Slade said, forcing his body to relax. First rule of captivity, assess, adapt, survive. The bridge doors hissed open as Picard entered sickbay, Commander William Riker at his side. The captain's measured gaze took in the armored figure restrained on the bio bed, noting the professional stillness that marked a trained soldier evaluating his captors. I'm Captain Jean-Luc Picard. This is my first officer, Commander Riker. What's your name? Slade calculated the angles. These people had saved his life, showed no immediate hostility beyond reasonable security precautions, and seemed genuinely curious rather than threatened. But he'd learned long ago that courtesy was often the sharpest blade. Slade Wilson. Mr. Wilson, Picard said, clasping his hands behind his back. You appeared through a quantum anomaly in deep space. Our sensors detected no ship, no escape pod, nothing that would explain your presence. Can you tell us how you came to be here? I was on a mission. Enemy technology tore open what you're calling a quantum fissure. I went through. Slade paused. I assume I'm not where I started. That would be a considerable understatement, Picard replied. Our preliminary scans suggest you're not from this dimension at all. The quantum signature clinging to your cellular structure indicates transit through at least one layer of interdimensional space. Slade absorbed this. Interdimensional. That tracked with what he knew about the weapon, which meant getting home wasn't going to be a matter of stealing a ship and navigating back. He'd need these people, their technology, their resources. I want to go home, he said simply. Picard nodded. A reasonable desire. However, I'm afraid interdimensional transit is far beyond our current technological capabilities. We'll do everything we can to help you, but I must be honest. This may take considerable time and resources to resolve. Then I'll work, Slade said. I don't accept charity. Worf's eyes narrowed. What kind of work does a soldier from another dimension perform? Slade turned his head, meeting the Klingon's gaze through his helmet's eyepiece. He recognized a warrior when he saw one, and this one had the bearing of someone who'd seen real combat. Whatever needs doing. I'm a tactician, combatant, infiltration specialist. I've led armies and worked alone. Point me at a problem, and I'll solve it. We're not in the business of hiring mercenaries, Mr. Wilson, Picard said firmly. The Federation doesn't operate on those principles. Then what do you operate on? Exploration. Discovery. The peaceful pursuit of knowledge and the betterment of all species. Picard's voice carried absolute conviction. We're scientists and diplomats first, Mr. Wilson. Starfleet is not a military organization in the way you might understand it. Slade almost laughed. Almost. He'd heard idealists before, seen empires built on noble words crumble when reality came calling. But something in this captain's eyes suggested he actually believed it, which meant these people were either extraordinarily naive or had somehow built a society where such beliefs could survive. Either way, he was stranded in their universe. And Slade Wilson had survived worse odds than this. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Trek universe, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. Live long and prosper. Captain, Slade said carefully, I appreciate the rescue, but I need to understand what I'm dealing with here. What year is this? What government controls this region of space? And what would it take to access the technology that might get me home? Picard studied the armored figure for a long moment. Something about Slade Wilson unsettled him. not overtly threatening, but carrying the weight of violence like a familiar coat. This was a man accustomed to solving problems with force, thrust into a universe that prided itself on finding alternatives to violence. The year is 2367 by Earth's calendar, Picard began. You're in space controlled by the United Federation of Planets, an alliance of over 150 worlds united under principles of peace, cooperation, and mutual exploration. As for the technology, he glanced at Data, who had entered sickbay during the conversation. The quantum mechanics required to safely navigate interdimensional boundaries are largely theoretical, Data offered. However, Starfleet has encountered similar phenomena on previous occasions. With proper analysis of the residual quantum signature from your arrival, we may be able to reconstruct the dimensional frequency of your origin point. How long? Slade asked. Unknown. Days, weeks, possibly months, depending on the complexity of the dimensional variance. Slade's jaw tightened beneath his helmet. Months stranded in an unknown universe with unknown threats and unknown capabilities. Every instinct told him to break free, acquire weapons, establish a base of operations. But he was outnumbered, outgunned, and had no idea what kind of firepower this enterprise could bring to bear. So he'd play their game. For now, I'll cooperate fully, Slade said. On one condition. Picard raised an eyebrow. You're not in a position to negotiate conditions, Mr. Wilson. Then call it a request. Slade met the captain's eyes. I want to train. Whatever facilities you have for combat preparation, I want access. Sitting idle makes me inefficient, and if I'm going to be here for months, I need to stay sharp. Worf spoke before Picard could respond. Our training facilities are for Starfleet personnel only. Then make an exception. Or don't. Slade's tone remained neutral. But you pulled me out of space, and now I'm your responsibility. I can be useful, or I can be a problem waiting to happen. Your choice, Captain. The silence stretched. Crusher looked uncomfortable. Riker's hand drifted toward his phaser. Worf's expression promised violence if Slade made one wrong move. Picard made his decision. Very well. You'll be assigned guest quarters under security monitoring. Chief of Security Worf will arrange limited access to training facilities, supervised. In exchange, you'll submit to regular medical scans so Dr. Crusher can better understand your enhanced physiology, information that may prove crucial to returning you home. Acceptable. And Mr. Wilson? Picard's voice carried steel beneath the diplomacy. While you're aboard my ship, you'll abide by our rules. No weapons without authorization, no unauthorized access to restricted areas, and no violence against crew members. Break these terms, and you'll spend the remainder of your time here in the brig. Are we clear? Slade had been threatened by warlords, alien despots, and gods. This captain's quiet authority was different, the confidence of a man who'd faced the unknown and refused to blink. Crystal clear, Captain. As Picard left sickbay, Riker leaned close. You think we can trust him? I think, number one, that Mr. Wilson is a soldier without a war, trapped in a place where everything he knows is irrelevant. That makes him unpredictable. Picard paused at the doorway. But perhaps that's exactly what he needs. A chance to be something other than a weapon. In sickbay, Worf deactivated the restraining field with obvious reluctance. Slade sat up, testing his body's responses. The healing factor was still slow, but functional. Good enough. The Klingon loomed over him. I will be watching you, Wilson. If you threaten anyone aboard this vessel, I will end you. Permanently. Slade looked up at the warrior, noting the barely restrained aggression, the coiled readiness. This one wanted to fight. Needed to prove himself against an unknown threat. Lieutenant, Slade said quietly, I get the feeling you and I are going to understand each other very well. Worf's hands clenched into fists. The game had begun. Guest quarters on the Enterprise D were designed for comfort and diplomatic accommodation. Soft lighting, replicator access, a viewport displaying the slowly rotating stars of the Argolis cluster. To Slade Wilson, it felt like a gilded cage. He'd spent the first hour methodically examining every surface, testing every panel, cataloging potential weapons and escape routes with the instinctive thoroughness of a man who'd survived countless prisons. The door chimed. Slade turned from the viewport, his helmet still in place despite Dr. Crusher's requests to remove it for further examination. Old habits. Never show your full face to potential enemies. Come. The doors hissed open, revealing a figure that made Slade reassess everything he thought he understood about this universe. The man, if man was the correct term, had pale golden skin and eyes that reflected light with an almost metallic sheen. His movements were too precise, too measured, lacking the subtle inefficiencies of organic life. Good evening, Mr. Wilson. I am Lieutenant Commander Data, Second Officer and Chief Operations Officer of the Enterprise. Captain Picard has asked me to serve as your liaison during your time aboard. You're artificial, Slade said, not bothering with pretense. I am an android, yes. Data stepped into the quarters, hands clasped behind his back in an unconscious imitation of Picard's posture. A positronic matrix provides the foundation for my neural network. I am fully sentient and recognized as a sentient being under Federation law. Slade processed this. Advanced AI, sophisticated enough to pass for human at a distance, treated as an equal by the crew. The technology alone suggested a civilization far beyond what he'd encountered in his own dimension. Why you as my liaison? Several reasons. First, as an artificial life form, I lack the emotional responses that might complicate interactions with someone of your background. Second, my computational abilities allow me to rapidly process and explain the significant cultural and technological differences you will encounter. Third, Data tilted his head slightly. I am extremely difficult to kill, which provides a margin of safety should you prove hostile despite your assurances. A slight smile tugged at Slade's lips beneath his helmet. Honesty. Refreshing. Fair enough. So you're my handler. I prefer to think of it as cultural orientation. Data moved to the replicator, ordering tea with the casual familiarity of routine. The device hummed, and a cup materialized from nothing. Actual matter conversion, not sleight of hand. I have taken the liberty of compiling a database of essential information about Federation society, Starfleet protocols, and the political landscape of the Alpha Quadrant. Would you like to begin your orientation? Slade gestured for Data to continue. If he was going to operate in this universe, he needed intelligence. The android was offering exactly that. The United Federation of Planets was founded in 2161, initially comprising Earth, Vulcan, Andoria, and Tellar. Data began, his voice taking on the quality of a professor delivering a well-rehearsed lecture. It has since expanded to include over 150 member worlds, united under principles of peaceful exploration, scientific advancement, and mutual cooperation. The Prime Directive, Starfleet's General Order 1, prohibits interference with the natural development of pre-warp civilizations. Pre-warp, Slade interrupted. Civilizations that have not yet developed faster than light travel. The achievement of warp capability is considered the threshold at which a species is ready for contact with the greater galactic community. Slade filed that away. These people had rules about who they'd even talk to, based on technological development. Noble, maybe. Naive, definitely. And when civilizations start killing each other, you just watch. The Prime Directive is not without controversy, Data admitted. Captain Picard himself has faced situations where adherence to the directive resulted in significant moral conflict. However, the underlying philosophy is that imposed cultural evolution, even with beneficial intent, often results in unforeseen consequences that harm more than help. You're telling me this ship has the power to stop genocides, cure plagues, end wars, and you choose not to because of a regulation? We choose not to because history has demonstrated that interference, no matter how well-intentioned, frequently destroys the very cultures we seek to help. Data's golden eyes met Slade's single visible eye. The Federation learned this lesson through considerable tragedy. The Prime Directive is written in the blood of worlds that were saved into extinction. Slade said nothing for a long moment. He'd seen enough well-meaning interventions turn into disasters to recognize the logic, even if he disagreed with the absolutism. In his world, you acted when action was necessary. You dealt with consequences after. What about threats to the Federation itself? Slade asked. You mentioned this is the Alpha Quadrant. That implies other powers. Indeed. The Klingon Empire, the Romulan Star Empire, the Cardassian Union, and numerous smaller states all maintain territories in the Alpha and Beta quadrants. The Klingon are currently allied with the Federation, though the relationship remains complex. The Romulans maintain an uneasy peace across the neutral zone. The Cardassians, Data paused, choosing his words carefully, are expansionist and have been involved in territorial disputes with the Federation. So you do fight when necessary. When peaceful alternatives have been exhausted, yes. Starfleet maintains defensive capabilities. However, our primary mission remains exploration and diplomacy. Slade stood, pacing the quarters with the restless energy of a caged predator. Data, I'm going to be honest with you since you've been honest with me. In my world, I'm what your captain would call a mercenary. I take contracts, complete missions, get paid. Usually those missions involve eliminating targets or achieving objectives through force. I've worked for governments, corporations, anyone with the right price and a job that meets my criteria. You are an assassin, Data stated without judgment. I'm a soldier who works for himself instead of a flag. There's a difference. Slade stopped at the viewport, watching a distant asteroid tumble through space. Point is, everything you've described, this Federation, the Prime Directive, the emphasis on diplomacy over force, it's completely alien to how I operate. I solve problems by being better at violence than whoever's creating the problem. And yet you survived our initial encounter without attempting to harm anyone despite clear tactical opportunities, Data observed. Dr. Crusher was vulnerable during your medical examination. Security personnel rotate shifts with predictable patterns. You have identified 17 potential improvised weapons within these quarters alone, yet have acted on none of these observations. This suggests capacity for restraint. Slade turned, studying the android. You're monitoring me. Constantly. Your enhanced physiology generates a distinctive biosignature. It would be negligent not to track your movements aboard a vessel containing 1,014 crew members and civilians. Data's head tilted again, that curious, almost human gesture. However, my analysis suggests you are not currently a threat. You are adapting to your situation with remarkable efficiency. I adapt or I die. Those are the options. Then perhaps, Data said, you will adapt to a universe where violence is the last resort rather than the first solution. Before Slade could respond, his quarters comm system chirped. Worf's gravelly voice filled the room. Wilson, report to Holodeck 3. We are beginning your training evaluation. Data stood smoothly. I will escort you. The holodecks are a technology you will find interesting. The corridors of the Enterprise D were wide, well lit, and filled with crew members moving with purposeful efficiency. Slade noted everything: security stations, emergency bulkheads, weapons lockers marked with biometric locks. Several crew members openly stared as he passed, the armored figure with Data generating whispers and nervous glances. You are generating considerable curiosity, Data observed. We do not often have visitors from other dimensions. The crew is uncertain how to categorize you. They're scared, Slade corrected. I'm an unknown variable in their controlled environment. That makes me dangerous. Are you dangerous, Mr. Wilson? To my enemies? Absolutely. Slade glanced at Data. To these people? Depends on whether they become enemies. They reached Holodeck 3, where Worf waited with arms crossed, looking like a statue carved from violence and barely restrained hostility. The Klingon's eyes tracked Slade's approach with predatory focus. You requested training facilities, Worf growled. I will assess your capabilities before granting unsupervised access. The holodeck will provide a controlled environment. What is a holodeck? Slade asked. Data gestured to the large doors. A holographic environment capable of creating realistic simulations using a combination of holographic projections, force fields, and replicated matter. Within these walls, we can recreate virtually any environment or scenario. You're telling me this room can create entire worlds? Essentially, yes, with certain limitations regarding size and complexity. Data moved to the control panel. Lieutenant Worf has prepared a combat assessment scenario. The doors opened, revealing a vast jungle environment, dense vegetation, humid air, the distant sounds of alien wildlife. Slade stepped inside, his boots sinking slightly into replicated soil that felt completely real. He reached out, touching a tree trunk. Solid, textured, indistinguishable from reality. This is incredible, he admitted. It is also dangerous, Worf said, entering behind him. In his hands, he carried two batleths, curved Klingon blades designed for close combat. He tossed one toward Slade, who caught it reflexively. "We will determine if your confidence matches your skill." Slade examined the weapon, beautifully balanced, wickedly sharp, designed for a fighting style he'd never encountered. The weight felt good in his hands, familiar despite its alien design. "You want to fight me?" Slade said, not a question. "I want to know what you are capable of," Worf corrected. "The captain believes in diplomacy and second chances. I believe in preparation. If you become a threat to this ship, I will be ready. And if I beat you, you will not." Worf settled into a combat stance, the batleth held in the traditional Klingon grip. "But you may survive long enough to learn respect." Slade rolled his shoulders, testing his body's response. The healing factor was still sluggish, but his enhanced strength and reflexes felt normal. He'd fought warriors from a dozen worlds, mastered countless fighting styles, survived battles that should have killed him 10 times over. This Klingon was good. Slade could see it in his stance, the economy of his movement, but good wasn't enough. "Computer," Data said from the holodeck entrance, "begin recording." Combat assessment, Slade Wilson, supervised by Lieutenant Worf. "Safety protocols enabled." "What are safety protocols?" Slade asked, not taking his eyes off Worf. "They prevent lethal injuries," Data explained. "You may experience pain and simulated damage, but the holodeck will not allow permanent harm." Worf's lip curled. "A warrior does not need safety protocols." "A warrior," Slade replied, "uses every advantage, including knowing his opponent wants to prove himself more than he wants to win smart." He moved. The jungle exploded into violence. Worf had expected attack, had prepared for it, but Slade's enhanced speed turned expectation into desperate defense. The batleth rang against batleth, the Klingon's superior strength meeting the mercenary's superior technique. They circled, struck, parried, each testing the other's defenses. Worf fought with the disciplined fury of Klingon martial tradition, powerful strikes designed to overwhelm and intimidate. Slade fought like water finding cracks in stone, redirecting force, exploiting openings, turning the Klingon's strength against him. "You fight without honor," Worf snarled, blocking a strike aimed at his knee. "I fight to win," Slade countered, ducking under a powerful horizontal slash. "Honor is what you tell yourself when you're losing." That got a reaction. Worf roared, abandoning technique for sheer aggression, the batleth becoming a blur of deadly metal. For 3 seconds, Slade was on pure defense, giving ground, reading the pattern in Worf's attack sequence. There, the slight overextension on the 4th strike, the momentary exposure of the ribs. Slade's boot caught Worf in the chest, not hard enough to seriously injure, but sufficient to break his rhythm. The Klingon stumbled back, surprise flashing across his face. No one on this ship would dare strike him that way. No one had the speed or audacity. "You're good," Slade admitted, breathing harder than he'd like. "Better than most. But you're used to fighting people who respect Klingon tradition. I don't." Worf's eyes narrowed. "Then I will teach you to respect it." They clashed again, and this time Worf adapted, incorporating feints and misdirection into his assault. Good. The Klingon learned fast. But Slade had been fighting since Worf was probably in diapers, or whatever Klingon wore as children. He knew how warriors thought, how they moved, where pride made them vulnerable. The match lasted 7 minutes before Data called a halt. Both combatants were breathing hard, neither having achieved decisive victory. Worf's uniform was torn at the shoulder where Slade had scored a glancing hit. Slade's armor showed fresh scoring from near misses that would have been lethal strikes. "Impressive," Data commented, reviewing the recorded data. "Mr. Wilson demonstrates combat efficiency exceeding human norms by approximately 47%. Lieutenant Worf's technique remains superior in raw power application, but Mr. Wilson's tactical adaptability compensates for the strength differential." "He fights like a P-tac," Worf growled, but there was a glint of something else in his eyes. "Respect, maybe, or the anticipation of a rematch." "I fight like someone who survives," Slade corrected, setting down the batleth. "Because in my world, Lieutenant, losing doesn't mean you get to try again tomorrow. It means you're dead, and someone else collects the contract." Worf studied him for a long moment. "You are not what I expected." "What did you expect? A barbarian?" A mindless killer. Worf's expression hardened. Instead, I find a warrior who thinks. That makes you more dangerous, not less. Then we understand each other. As they exited the holodeck, Data accompanying them back toward guest quarters, Slade's enhanced hearing picked up a conversation between two crew members in an adjacent corridor. Heard Section 31 is interested in the dimensional refugee. Keep your voice down. If the captain finds out they're sniffing around. The voices faded as the speakers moved away. Slade filed the information away. Section 31. An organization important enough that crew members whispered about it. Something operating beneath or alongside official Starfleet channels. Data, Slade said casually. What's Section 31? The android's stride didn't break, but something shifted in his expression, a nanosecond of processing that suggested careful word choice. Section 31 is rumored to be an autonomous intelligence organization operating outside official Starfleet oversight. Their existence remains unconfirmed by Starfleet Command. But they exist. That is the general consensus among those who have encountered evidence of their operations. Data's golden eyes met Slade's. They are, in many ways, the antithesis of Federation ideals, operating in shadows, making morally questionable decisions in the name of Federation security. If they are aware of your presence, it would be logical for them to take interest. Because I'm exactly the kind of asset they'd want. Precisely. Slade said nothing more as they walked, but his mind was already working through scenarios. An intelligence organization that operated outside official channels, in a universe where everyone else played by strict rules. That was leverage. That was opportunity. That was dangerous. Back in his quarters, after Data had departed with a reminder that dinner could be replicated at will, Slade finally removed his helmet. He stared at his reflection in the viewport's glass. The white hair, the eye patch covering his missing eye, the scar tissue that mapped decades of violence across his features. This universe thought it had evolved beyond people like him. Thought diplomacy and principles could solve every problem. Maybe they were right. Maybe in this dimension, that worked. But Slade had survived too long to trust maybes. And something told him this Federation, for all its noble ideals, would eventually need someone willing to do what they couldn't. When that time came, he'd be ready. 3 days into his stay aboard the Enterprise, Slade had established a routine. Morning training sessions in the holodeck under Worf's increasingly grudging supervision. Afternoons spent with Data, absorbing information about Federation technology, political structures, and the bizarre physics that governed warp travel. Evenings alone in his quarters, planning contingencies for situations he hoped wouldn't arise. It was during one of these afternoon sessions that Dr. Crusher arrived at the science lab where Data had been explaining the theoretical principles behind quantum dimensional frequencies. She carried a PADD and wore the expression Slade had learned to associate with someone about to deliver news they knew he wouldn't like. Mr. Wilson, I've completed my analysis of your cellular structure, she began, setting the PADD on the console. Your healing factor is remarkable. Your cells regenerate at approximately 15 times the normal human rate. But there's a complication. Slade's eye narrowed. What kind of complication? The quantum radiation exposure from your dimensional transit is interfering with your regenerative processes. It's subtle, but measurable. Your healing factor is operating at roughly 75% efficiency compared to what I believe is your baseline. Crusher pulled up a holographic display showing cellular diagrams that meant nothing to Slade. The good news is it's not getting worse. The bad news is it won't improve until we can flush the quantum particles from your system. How do we do that? We don't. Not yet. Crusher's expression softened slightly. The same quantum signature is our only link to your home dimension. If we purge it from your system before we've mapped the dimensional frequency, we lose our best chance of sending you back. Slade processed this. His edge, the healing factor that had saved his life countless times, was compromised. Not critically, but enough to matter in a serious fight. And fixing it meant potentially stranding himself here permanently. How long to map the frequency? I'm working with Lieutenant Commander LaForge in engineering, Data interjected. Our current estimate is 2 to 3 weeks, assuming no complications. However, dimensional mechanics are not an exact science. Variables may extend that time frame considerably. Before Slade could respond, the ship's intercom crackled to life. Bridge to Captain Picard. We're receiving a distress call from the Federation colony on Tavola Minor. They're under attack by unidentified raiders. Picard's voice came through clearly. Red alert. All senior staff to the bridge. Helm, set course for Tavola Minor, maximum warp. The familiar klaxon began its urgent wail. Crusher immediately headed for the door, medical training overriding everything else. Data stood smoothly, already moving with purpose. You should return to your quarters, the android said to Slade. Combat situations require all guest passengers too. I can help, Slade interrupted. Your combat skills are noted, but this is a Starfleet matter. Protocol requires. Protocol can get people killed while you're following it. Slade was already heading for the door. You've got raiders attacking a colony. That means civilians in danger and time running out. I've handled situations like this dozens of times. Data's path blocked the exit, the android's superior strength making the gesture unmistakable. Captain Picard was explicit. You are not to be involved in ship operations without authorization. Then get authorization. They stared at each other for 3 seconds before Data tapped his comm badge. Data to Captain Picard. Go ahead, Commander. Sir, Mr. Wilson is requesting permission to assist with the Tavola Minor situation. He claims relevant tactical experience. The pause stretched long enough that Slade knew Picard was weighing principles against pragmatism. Finally, denied. Mr. Wilson remains in guest quarters under security watch. Data, you're needed on the bridge. The android nodded, though Picard couldn't see it. Acknowledged. Data out. He looked at Slade. I am sorry, but I get it. You don't trust me with your people's lives. Slade stepped back from the door. Go do what you need to do, Commander. Data hesitated, something almost like regret crossing his features, then left at a brisk pace. The door sealed behind him. Slade counted to 30, then moved to the science lab's computer terminal. He'd spent 3 days watching how these systems worked. The security was impressive but designed to prevent unauthorized access to sensitive data, not to stop someone from viewing public ship operations. With a few carefully chosen commands, mimicking the input patterns he'd observed Data using. Slade accessed the bridge communication feeds. The viewscreen image appeared on the terminal, a small Federation colony under siege. 3 raider ships, cruder than Enterprise but well-armed, bombarded defensive shields while ground forces extracted colonists. The tactical display showed 87 colonists already taken, with raiders systematically working through residential sectors. Picard's voice cut through the chaos. Mr. Worf, can we target the raider ships without risking the colony? Negative, Captain. Their vessels are using the colony's shield generators as cover. If we fire, the feedback could collapse the shields entirely. Options, number 1. Riker's voice. We could beam a security team directly into the colony, but the raiders have transport inhibitors active. We'd need to disable them first. Which gives them time to take more hostages, or worse, evacuate with the colonists they've already captured, Picard said, frustration bleeding through his normally composed tone. Slade studied the tactical display, his enhanced mind processing angles and possibilities. The raiders were professionals, organized, equipped, executing a planned operation. Slavers, most likely, or forced labor acquisition. The transport inhibitors were mobile units based on their dispersal pattern, probably carried by ground teams. Take those out, Starfleet could beam in reinforcements. But Starfleet wouldn't risk beaming someone into an active combat zone without reconnaissance. Too many variables, too much risk. They'd negotiate, try to establish communication, waste time while the raiders extracted their haul. Slade's fingers moved across the console, accessing internal sensors. The Enterprise had a complement of type, 3 phasers in the armory, locked behind biometric security he couldn't bypass. But the ship also had maintenance equipment, engineering tools, emergency supplies. Things that could be weaponized by someone with the right knowledge and desperation. The door chimed. Slade quickly closed the tactical feed, bringing up a benign database on Federation history. Come. The doors opened to reveal not a security escort, but a tall man in a nondescript duty uniform, human features that were somehow forgettable, eyes that assessed Slade with the cold calculation of a professional evaluator. Mr. Wilson, I'm Commander Benson, Strategic Operations. The man stepped inside without invitation. I've been reviewing your situation with interest. Slade's instincts screamed. Wrong uniform insignia, barely noticeable differences from standard Starfleet. Wrong body language. This man moved like Slade did, like someone trained to kill efficiently. Wrong timing. Appearing during a crisis when security attention was elsewhere. Section 31. I don't remember requesting a strategic consultation, Slade said carefully. You didn't. But I'm here anyway, because we have a mutual problem. Benson moved to the viewport, ostensibly watching the stars streak past at warp speed. Tavola Minor is being raided by Orion Syndicate slavers. Nasty people. The colony's planetary defense force was overwhelmed in the initial assault, and now Starfleet has to play by its rules. Prime Directive considerations. Minimize civilian casualties. Attempt diplomatic resolution before using force. And you're telling me this why? Because those rules are going to get people killed or enslaved while Captain Picard follows proper channels. Benson turned, meeting Slade's gaze directly. You, on the other hand, don't have to follow those rules. You're not Starfleet. You're not bound by our regulations. You're exactly the kind of asymmetric asset a situation like this requires. You want me to go down there and handle the slavers while Enterprise keeps everyone's attention, Slade said flatly. I want to give you an opportunity to demonstrate value. You claim to be a tactician, a problem solver. Prove it. We can transport you to the surface, provide intelligence support, and extraction when the job's done. In exchange, let me guess, you help me get home. Benson smiled without warmth. We have resources Starfleet science doesn't. Experimental technology, classified research into dimensional mechanics. Things Captain Picard would never approve for use on an unknown entity from another universe. But we're more pragmatic. It was everything Slade had expected and nothing he trusted. Section 31 was offering him exactly what he wanted, a way home, in exchange for becoming their deniable asset. Do the dirty work Starfleet wouldn't, and get rewarded for it. The problem was, he'd made this deal before. Dozens of times, in his own universe. Work for shadowy organizations with noble justifications and morally flexible methods. It always ended the same way. Used until he became inconvenient, then discarded or eliminated. What's stopping me from telling Picard you're trying to recruit me? Slade asked. Nothing. He'd investigate, find no evidence of my existence aboard this ship, and conclude you're either lying or delusional. Section 31 doesn't officially exist, Mr. Wilson. We're very good at maintaining that fiction. Benson pulled out a small device, setting it on the table. This is a transporter enhancer. When you're ready to accept our offer, activate it. We'll beam you directly to Tavola Minor with full tactical briefing and equipment. Complete the mission, and we'll begin work on getting you home. And if I refuse? Then you spend the next several months as Captain Picard's pet project while he tries to solve an interdimensional puzzle with one hand tied behind his back by Starfleet regulations. Eventually you'll go home, maybe. Or you'll spend the rest of your life as a dimensional refugee telling yourself you made the moral choice. Benson headed for the door, pausing at the threshold. The Orion Syndicate takes approximately 300 colonists every hour they're on site, Mr. Wilson. Right now, we're at hour 2. By the time Starfleet establishes communication and begins negotiations, we'll be looking at 600 people in chains. But at least everyone will have followed proper procedure. The door sealed behind him, leaving Slade alone with the transporter enhancer and a choice that wasn't really a choice at all. He stared at the device, then back at the computer terminal where the tactical feed was still running in the background. On screen, another group of colonists was being herded into raider transports, families separated, children crying. The kind of scene he'd witnessed countless times across countless conflicts. The difference was, in his universe, he'd usually been working for whoever was doing the taking. Contracts were contracts. Moral considerations didn't factor into professional operations. But these weren't professional operations. These were slavers preying on civilians. And Slade had his limits. Always had, even when people assumed otherwise. He picked up the transporter enhancer, feeling its weight. Small device, massive implications. Activate it, and he'd be telling Section 31 he was theirs. Refuse it, and people would suffer while Starfleet's ideals got in the way of action. There was, of course, a third option. Slade pocketed the device and headed for the door. His security escort, A young ensign who looked barely old enough to shave stood at attention outside. "I need to speak with Captain Picard," Slade said. "Now." "Sir, the captain is managing a crisis situation. He can't." "Tell him I have tactical intelligence about the Tavalam minor raid. Information that could save lives." Slade's tone left no room for argument. "He'll want to hear it." The ensign hesitated, then tapped his comm badge. "Security to bridge. Mr. Wilson is requesting urgent consultation with Captain Picard regarding the current situation." 30 seconds of silence. Then Picard's voice, clipped and stressed. "Have Lieutenant Worf escort him to the ready room. I'll spare 5 minutes. But this had better be substantive." The ready room was smaller than Slade expected, dominated by a desk covered in pads and a fish tank containing something alien and bioluminescent. Picard stood at the viewport, watching the tactical situation on a small monitor, his expression carved from stone and frustration. "Mr. Wilson, I don't have time for." "Section 31 just tried to recruit me," Slade interrupted. "Offered to send me down to Tavalam Minor to handle the slavers off book while you follow procedure. In exchange, they'd help me get home using classified dimensional technology." That got Picard's full attention. The captain turned, his eyes sharp and dangerous. "Section 31 contacted you? Here? On my ship?" Man called himself Commander Benson. "Gave me this." Slade placed the transporter enhancer on Picard's desk. "Said I could beam down, do what needs doing without Starfleet's rules getting in the way, and they'd make my problems disappear." Picard stared at the device like it might explode. "And you're telling me this because?" "Because I don't work for people who operate in shadows and expect blind loyalty. I've made that mistake before." Slade met the captain's gaze squarely. "And because if I'm going to help those colonists, and I am going to help them, I'd rather do it with your knowledge than behind your back. You're volunteering for a combat mission against my explicit orders. I'm offering tactical expertise you need. Those raiders have mobile transport inhibitors set up in a dispersed pattern for units based on the signal interference I saw on the bridge feeds. Take those out. Your people can beam in reinforcements and extract the colonists. But you need someone on the ground to locate and disable the inhibitors while the raiders are focused on Enterprise." Picard's jaw tightened. "You accessed bridge communications without authorization. I accessed public ship operations using standard terminal commands. If that's a security breach, your systems need better protocols." Slade leaned forward. "Captain, we can debate regulations after people stop being loaded into slave ships. Right now, you need someone who can move fast, fight dirty, and doesn't care about following diplomatic procedure. That's not your security teams. That's me. You have no Starfleet training, no knowledge of our tactical protocols, and a compromised healing factor according to Dr. Crusher's reports. You'd be operating alone in hostile territory with no support. So a typical Tuesday for me." Despite the severity of the situation, Picard's lip twitched. Almost a smile. Almost. "If I authorize this, and that's a significant if, you would be operating under strict parameters. Disable the transport inhibitors, nothing more. No engaging raiders unless absolutely necessary, no unnecessary violence, and immediate extraction once the objective is complete. And if the raiders make it necessary, then you do what you must to survive. But Mr. Wilson," Picard's voice dropped to steel, "if you use this as an opportunity to indulge in gratuitous violence, if you deviate from the mission parameters for personal satisfaction, I will see you confined to quarters for the remainder of your time aboard this vessel. Are we absolutely clear?" Slade nodded. "Crystal." Picard tapped his comm badge. "Picard to Worf. Report to my ready room immediately. And have Commander LaForge meet us in Transporter Room 3. He looked at Slade with an expression that mixed wariness with something that might have been respect. "You have one chance to prove you're more than a weapon looking for a target, Mr. Wilson. Don't waste it." Transporter Room 3 hummed with tension as LaForge made final adjustments to the transport coordinates. The chief engineer's visor, a remarkable piece of technology that allowed him to see across multiple spectrums despite his blindness, swept across the console with practiced efficiency. "The transport inhibitors are generating a lot of interference," LaForge said, his fingers dancing across controls. "I can get you within 200 meters of the nearest unit, but you'll have to close the distance on foot. The inhibitors are keyed to block humanoid biosignatures, so once you're on the ground, We won't be able to beam you out until they're disabled. Slade nodded, checking the equipment Worf had provided with obvious reluctance. A Type 2 phaser, set to heavy stun. A tricorder for locating the inhibitor units. A comm badge for communication. No armor beyond his own damaged suit. No backup weapons. No extraction plan beyond. Complete the mission and hope Starfleet can beam you out before the slavers notice. Perfect. The Orion Syndicate operates with brutal efficiency, Worf said, his tone carrying the weight of experience. They will have guards posted at each inhibitor location, possibly automated defenses as well. If you are captured, they will not hesitate to kill you or add you to their slave inventory. Noted. Slade stepped onto the transporter pad, the phaser holstered at his hip. How much time do I have? Picard consulted a PADD displaying real-time tactical data. Our communications officer is attempting to establish dialogue with the Raider command ship. That should buy you approximately 15 minutes before they realize it's a stalling tactic. After that, they'll likely accelerate their extraction and prepare to leave the system. Then I'd better work fast. Mr. Wilson. Picard's voice stopped him. The colonists are our priority. Not revenge, not proving a point. Lives saved, nothing more. Slade met the captain's eyes, seeing the genuine concern there. Picard actually cared about what happened to him, a stranger from another dimension who represented everything Starfleet tried to move beyond. That kind of principled compassion was rare in Slade's experience. It made him want to prove the captain right. Understood, sir. Just the inhibitors. Energize, Picard ordered. The transporter beam caught Slade in its familiar tingle, and reality dissolved into light and possibility. For a moment he existed everywhere and nowhere, quantum probability made manifest, his enhanced senses screaming at the wrongness of having his molecules disassembled and reconstructed. Then he was on Tavola Minor, rematerializing in an alley between two residential structures. The air tasted of smoke and ozone. Distant screams echoed through the colony streets. Weapons fire crackled somewhere to the north. Slade pulled out the tricorder, activating it with the quick instruction data had provided during their sessions. The device chirped softly, displaying a simplified map of the immediate area with 4 distinct energy signatures highlighted in red. The nearest was 80 meters east, tucked behind what the tricorder identified as a water reclamation facility. He moved. The colony was burning in places, defensive shields flickering overhead as the Orion Raider ships continued their bombardment. Slade kept to the shadows, his training allowing him to navigate the chaos without drawing attention. Twice he passed groups of colonists being herded by Orion guards, tall, muscular beings with green skin and expressions of casual cruelty. His hand drifted toward the phaser both times. Mission parameters. Inhibitors only. He repeated it like a mantra as he slipped past the guards, anger building with each terrorized face. This was why he'd established rules for himself years ago. No slavery contracts. No jobs involving kids. Some lines you didn't cross, regardless of the payday. The first inhibitor sat in the shadow of the water facility, a cylindrical device approximately 2 meters tall, with obvious power couplings and a control interface. 2 Orion guards stood watch, disruptor rifles held with the casual competence of experienced enforcers. Slade studied the situation from concealment 30 meters away. Direct approach would alert them. Phaser set to heavy stun could drop 1, maybe both if he was fast enough. But the sound would carry, potentially drawing reinforcements. He needed them quiet. Setting the tricorder aside, Slade grabbed a piece of debris, part of a broken support beam, and threw it hard toward the far side of the facility. The metallic clang drew immediate attention. The guards exchanged glances, then one moved to investigate while the other maintained position near the inhibitor. Classic mistake. Never split your forces when guarding a critical asset. Slade waited until the investigating guard rounded the corner out of sight, then moved. His enhanced speed ate the distance in seconds. The remaining guard turned at the sound of approaching footsteps, disruptor rifle coming up. Slade's hand clamped over the Orion's mouth as his other arm locked around the guard's throat in a sleeper hold. The guard thrashed, impressive strength nearly breaking the hold, but Slade had wrestled Klingon in the holodeck. He knew how to leverage position over pure power. 15 seconds of sustained pressure, and the Orion went limp. The second guard returned at a run, alerted by the sounds of struggle. Slade grabbed the dropped disruptor rifle, firing from the hip. The green energy bolt caught the Orion's center mass, and the guard dropped like a puppet with cut strings. "Wilson to Enterprise," Slade said into his comm badge, keeping his voice low. "First inhibitor located. How do I disable it?" Data's voice came through clearly despite the interference. "The control interface should have a primary power coupling on the lower left quadrant. Removing it will cause immediate shutdown, though it may trigger an alarm." Slade examined the device, finding the coupling data described. He yanked it free with a shower of sparks. The inhibitor's hum died immediately, its display going dark. "One down," Slade reported. "Moving to target 2. "Acknowledged," Picard's voice. "Be advised, the raiders are becoming agitated. Our diplomatic overtures are failing to maintain their attention. You have approximately 10 minutes before they withdraw. 10 minutes to cover 3 more locations, disable 3 more inhibitors, and avoid detection by increasingly paranoid slavers." Slade checked the tricorder, plotting the fastest route to the second target. 120 meters northeast, positioned near what appeared to be a school building. He ran. The colony was a maze of smoke and chaos. Slade navigated by instinct and tricorder guidance, twice having to freeze in shadows as raider patrols passed within meters. His compromised healing factor meant he couldn't afford injuries. A disruptor blast that would normally heal in minutes might sideline him permanently in this dimension. The second inhibitor came into view, and Slade's blood went cold. 6 colonists, all children, none older than 12, were bound near the device, guarded by 3 Orion slavers. The children were terrified, crying, calling for parents who were either dead or captured elsewhere. One guard was talking into a communication device, likely arranging transport for this particular cargo. Child slaves. Premium merchandise in certain markets. Slade's hand tightened on the phaser until it hurt. Every instinct screamed to go loud, to drop all 3 guards and get those kids to safety. But the mission was the inhibitor. Disable it, let Starfleet beam in security teams, let them handle the rescue. Except there wasn't time. The guard was calling for transport now. Those children would be gone in minutes, lost to whatever hell the Orion Syndicate had planned for them. Mission parameters versus moral imperative. Picard's words echoed in his mind. Lives saved, nothing more. Slade made his decision. He set the phaser to maximum stun and stepped from concealment. "Hey!" All 3 guards spun toward him, disruptors rising. Slade fired 3 times in rapid succession. Center mass, headshot on the one reaching for an alarm device. All 3 dropped before they could return fire, the phaser's higher setting overwhelming their natural durability. The children screamed at the sudden violence. Slade holstered the phaser and moved to them, pulling a blade from his boot to cut their restraints. "It's okay. I'm here to help. Stay quiet and stay down." A girl, maybe 10 years old, stared at him with wide eyes. "Are you Starfleet?" "Close enough. Where are your parents?" "They took them. The green people took them to the big building." She pointed toward the colony's central administrative structure. Slade finished cutting the last restraint, then moved to the inhibitor. He ripped out the power coupling as before, the device dying with a electronic whine. "Wilson to Enterprise. Second inhibitor down. I've got 6 children who need immediate extraction." "Mr. Wilson, what?" Picard's voice cut off as he clearly reviewed sensor data. "You engaged the guards. They were about to transport the kids off-world. I made a tactical decision. Silence on the line. Then, transporter room. Lock onto those 6 biosignatures and beam them directly to sickbay. Commander Data, I want a full security team standing by." A pause. "Well done, Mr. Wilson. 2 inhibitors remaining. We're reading increased raider activity near your position. They know something's wrong." Acknowledged. Moving to target 3. Slade ran again, leaving the children behind as the transporter beam claimed them. The colony was definitely more alert now. Raider patrols had tripled, and he could hear shouted commands in the Orion trade language. His tricorder showed the 3rd inhibitor 180 meters south, in an industrial sector. He was halfway there when disruptor fire lit up the street ahead. Slade dove behind a parked transport vehicle as green energy bolts superheated the air where he'd been standing. 4 Orion raiders, heavily armed, advancing with covering fire. They'd found him. Slade returned fire from behind cover, his phaser dropping one raider before the others scattered to better positions. This wasn't going to be quick or clean. He checked his phaser's charge, 60% remaining. Enough for maybe a dozen more shots before it needed recharging. Enterprise, I'm engaged with hostiles. Can you? Negative, Mr. Wilson. The transport inhibitors are still blocking our ability to lock onto your biosignature. You'll have to break contact and continue the mission. Right. Because nothing was ever easy. Slade grabbed the disruptor rifle from the guard he'd dropped at the first inhibitor. He'd had the presence of mind to take it, and laid down suppressing fire. The Orions ducked, giving him 3 seconds to sprint across the street into better cover. Disruptor bolts chased him, one close enough that he felt the heat through his armor. A running firefight through the colony followed, Slade using every tactical trick he knew to stay ahead of the pursuit. He led them through narrow alleys, across rooftops, anywhere that negated their numerical advantage. The enhanced reflexes helped, letting him snapshot targets that would have been impossible for normal humans. But he was tiring. The compromised healing factor meant adrenaline depletion was hitting harder than usual. His movements were getting sloppy, reaction times decreasing by milliseconds that could prove fatal. The third inhibitor appeared ahead, miraculously unguarded. The raiders must have pulled everyone into the search for him. Slade sprinted for it. Bullets. No. Disruptor bolts, tracking his movement. One grazed his shoulder, spinning him halfway around. Pain flared, but not the catastrophic injury a direct hit would have caused. He reached the inhibitor and tore out the power coupling one-handed, his other arm hanging useless. The device died. Immediately, his comm badge chirped. "We have transporter lock." LaForge's voice, excited. "Captain, I can beam security teams directly to." "Do it," Picard ordered. "All teams, execute. Mr. Wilson, fall back to a defensible position. We're extracting you as soon as the fourth inhibitor is down." Slade consulted the tricorder, his vision starting to blur at the edges. Blood loss, probably. The shoulder wound was worse than he'd thought. The fourth inhibitor was 90 meters northwest, back toward the center of the colony where the fighting was heaviest. Of course it was. He staggered into motion as gold shimmer materialized around him. Starfleet security teams beaming in by the dozen. The tide was turning. Now he just had to survive long enough to finish the job. The fourth inhibitor sat in the shadow of the administrative building, surrounded by a hastily erected barricade and at least a dozen Orion guards. They'd figured out what he was doing and consolidated their defenses. Smart. Slade crouched behind a destroyed vehicle, assessing the situation with the cold calculation that had kept him alive through countless impossible missions. Direct assault was suicide. Stealth was impossible with this many guards maintaining overlapping sight lines. He needed a distraction, something big enough to pull their attention while he slipped in and disabled the device. His eye fell on a nearby power conduit, damaged by the bombardment and sparking intermittently. Overload it, create an explosion, use the chaos to reach the inhibitor. Or he could just ask for help. "Enterprise, this is Wilson. I need fire support on my position. Can you target the area around the fourth inhibitor without hitting the device itself?" "Negative," Worf's voice. "The raider ships are using the colony's shield grid as protection. We cannot fire through it without risking catastrophic feedback. Then drop the shields for 3 seconds. Give me one phaser burst, precision targeting on the barricade. I'll handle the rest." That would expose the entire colony to bombardment from the raider ships, Picard said, his tone making clear what he thought of that idea. "They're already pulling out. Look at your sensors. They're recalling ground teams, loading the last of their cargo. They know they've lost. One phaser burst, Captain. 3 seconds of vulnerability for mission completion." The pause stretched long enough that Slade thought Picard would refuse. Then, "Mr. Worf, prepare to drop shields on my mark. Phaser banks. Precision strike on coordinates Mr. Wilson is about to provide. 3-second window, then shields back to maximum." Slade used the tricorder to mark the barricade location, transmitting coordinates to Enterprise. Targeting data sent. "On your order, Captain." Shields dropping in 3, 2, 1 mark. The colony's protective shield flickered and died. Immediately, the Orion raider ships began bombardment. their weapons fire streaking toward the unprotected settlement. But Enterprise was faster. A single brilliant orange phaser beam lanced from orbit with surgical precision, vaporizing the barricade and half the Orion guards in a flash of superheated plasma. The shields snapped back up, blocking the raiders' retaliatory fire. But the damage was done. The path to the inhibitor was clear. Slade ran, legs burning, shoulders screaming, vision tunneling. The remaining Orion guards turned toward him, weapons rising. He fired the disruptor rifle on full auto, not bothering with accuracy, just suppression. One guard dropped. 2. The rest scattered. He reached the inhibitor, grabbed the power coupling, and yanked. Nothing happened. The coupling was fused, damaged by the phaser strike's proximity. Slade pulled harder, his enhanced strength straining against melted components. The coupling shifted slightly, but held firm. Wilson, Worf's voice on the comm badge. The raiders are preparing to fire on your position directly. They know where you are. Slade drew his combat knife, the one piece of personal equipment Worf had allowed him to keep, and jammed it into the inhibitor's casing. He pried, levered, used the blade like a crowbar to force the coupling free. Metal shrieked. Sparks showered across his face. The coupling tore loose in a shower of components and burning circuitry. The inhibitor died with a dying electronic scream. 4th inhibitor down. Slade reported. Get me out of here. The transporter beam caught him mid-collapse, pulling him away from Tavola Minor just as Orion disruptor fire turned his former position into molten slag. Reality dissolved into quantum possibility, and when it reassembled, he was on the Enterprise transporter pad with Dr. Crusher already scanning him. Get him to sickbay now, she ordered. That shoulder wound is worse than it looks. But Slade pushed himself upright despite the pain, ignoring Crusher's protests. Through the observation window, he could see the bridge view screen displaying Tavola Minor. Starfleet security teams were methodically extracting colonists, securing raiders, dismantling the Orion operation with professional efficiency. Picard entered the transporter room, his expression unreadable. For a long moment, he simply studied Slade. The blood-soaked armor, the exhaustion evident in every line of his posture, the stubborn refusal to show weakness. You deviated from mission parameters, Picard finally said. I saved 6 children who were about to be sold into slavery. You engaged in unnecessary combat. I engaged in necessary combat. There's a difference. Picard's expression shifted slightly, almost a smile. Indeed there is, Mr. Wilson. Well done. Slade nodded once, then let Dr. Crusher drag him toward sickbay. As they left the transporter room, he heard Worf's voice behind him. Perhaps, the Klingon said quietly, there is honor in him after all. The recovery took 2 days. Dr. Crusher had been correct. The disruptor graze was worse than it looked. The exotic energy disrupting cellular regeneration in ways even Slade's enhanced physiology struggled to compensate for. But by the 3rd day post-mission, he was back in his quarters, restless and confined while Starfleet processed the aftermath of Tavola Minor. The door chimed at 0800 hours ship's time. Come. Data entered, carrying a PADD and wearing an expression Slade had learned to interpret as it concerned curiosity. The android set the PADD on the desk, then clasped his hands behind his back in that familiar Picard-mimicking gesture. The children you rescued have been reunited with their families. Data began without preamble. All 6 are unharmed physically, though Counselor Troy anticipates they will require psychological support for some time. Their parents have asked to meet you, to express their gratitude. Slade shook his head. Not necessary. I did what needed doing. Nevertheless, the offer stands. Data tilted his head slightly. Captain Picard also wished me to inform you that Starfleet Command has taken note of your actions. You are being considered for a formal commendation, though the diplomatic complications of honoring a dimensional refugee who is not technically a Federation citizen are proving complex. I don't need medals, Commander. I did not assume you did. However, I thought you should be aware that your actions have generated considerable discussion among the senior staff. Lieutenant Worf in particular has revised his threat assessment of you downward by approximately 43%. Despite himself, Slade smiled slightly. Only 43%. He remains cautious. As am I. Data's golden eyes studied Slade with that unnerving android intensity. You violated mission parameters to save those children. A calculated risk that could have compromised the entire operation. Yet your actions ultimately resulted in a more successful outcome than strict adherence to orders would have achieved. This presents an interesting philosophical problem, which is, when is disobedience the correct course of action? Data moved to the viewport, watching the stars drift past. I am programmed to follow orders, to respect the chain of command. Yet I have observed that truly exceptional outcomes often result from individuals who choose to challenge authority when they believe they are correct. Captain Kirk was famous for this. Captain Picard has done so on numerous occasions. And you, Mr. Wilson, demonstrated the principle in a way that saved lives but violated trust. Slade considered this. You're asking if the ends justified the means. I am asking if you would make the same choice again, knowing it damaged Captain Picard's confidence in your word. Every time, Slade said without hesitation. Those kids didn't have time for me to debate philosophy with the captain. They needed action. I provided it. Even knowing that such actions make you unpredictable, unreliable for future operations. I'm not looking for future operations, Data. I'm looking to go home. Slade stood, pacing the quarters with caged energy. But while I'm here, I'm not going to watch people suffer because following orders is more important than doing what's right. Data processed this for several seconds. An admirable sentiment. However, it places you fundamentally at odds with Starfleet's operational philosophy. We are not a military force that prioritizes mission success over all considerations. We are explorers who value process, ethics, and long-term consequences over immediate tactical advantage. Which is why you need people like me, Slade countered. Because when the universe doesn't play by your rules, and it won't, Commander, it never does, you'll need someone willing to get dirty while you keep your hands clean. Before Data could respond, the ship's intercom crackled. Bridge to Commander Data. We're receiving a priority communication from Starfleet intelligence. They're requesting a secure channel to discuss the Tavala Minor incident, and the guest currently aboard Enterprise. Data and Slade exchanged glances. Acknowledged. I will take the communication in conference room 2. He looked at Slade. You should accompany me. I suspect this concerns you directly. The conference room was dominated by a large view screen currently displaying the Starfleet intelligence seal. Captain Picard was already present, along with Counselor Troy, whose empathic abilities Slade had learned to be wary of. The Betazoid woman had a talent for reading emotional states that made lying effectively impossible. Ah, Mr. Wilson, Picard said as they entered. Starfleet intelligence has taken an interest in you. I thought it prudent you hear their concerns directly. The view screen activated, revealing a severe-looking human woman in the black and gray uniform of Starfleet intelligence. Her expression suggested someone perpetually disappointed by the universe's failure to meet her standards. Captain Picard, I'm Commander Tomalak, no relation to the Romulan. She added with the weariness of someone who'd made that clarification countless times. I've reviewed the reports from Tavala Minor. Your dimensional refugee performed admirably. Almost too admirably for someone supposedly stranded and confused in an unfamiliar universe. Your point, Commander? Picard's tone cooled noticeably. My point is that Mr. Wilson demonstrated tactical proficiency, familiarity with small unit combat operations, and an alarming capacity for violence that raises questions about who, or what, we're actually dealing with. Tomalak's eyes shifted to Slade. Mr. Wilson, I've analyzed the sensor logs from your engagement. You disabled 4 strategic targets, neutralized 16 hostile combatants, and extracted 6 civilians under fire with minimal support. That's not the performance of a confused refugee. That's the performance of a professional operator. Is that a compliment or an accusation? Slade asked. It's an observation. One that leads to uncomfortable questions, such as, why would an interdimensional anomaly conveniently deliver a highly trained combatant to a Federation starship? Why would that individual demonstrate immediate willingness to engage in dangerous operations? And why would Section 31, she paused meaningfully, show interest in recruiting such an individual so quickly? Picard's expression darkened. You're suggesting Mr. Wilson is a planted asset. I'm suggesting we exercise appropriate caution. Section 31 has been quiet for months. Too quiet. Then suddenly we have a dimensional refugee with convenient skills appearing through an impossible quantum anomaly, and Section 31 is immediately attempting recruitment. Tomalak shook her head. I don't believe in coincidence, Captain. Neither do I, said a new voice. Everyone turned as the conference room door opened to admit someone who hadn't been announced. The man was unremarkable, average height, forgettable features, the kind of face that disappeared in crowds. But his eyes carried the cold assessment of a professional killer. Commander Benson. Section 31. How did you get aboard my ship? Picard demanded, rising from his chair. The same way I always do, Captain. Quietly. Benson nodded to Tomalak's image. Commander. Still chasing shadows and seeing conspiracies. Still operating outside legal oversight and pretending it's patriotism? Tomalak fired back. Slade watched the exchange with professional interest. This was the hidden war. Intelligence agencies fighting territorial battles while pretending to serve the same government. He'd seen it before, in his own dimension. Different universe, same bureaucratic knives. Mr. Wilson, Benson said, turning his attention away from the screen, I apologize for the dramatic entrance. But I felt it important to clarify certain misconceptions before Starfleet intelligence makes decisions based on incomplete information. Such as, Picard's hand drifted toward his comm badge, likely contemplating calling security. Such as the notion that we recruited Mr. Wilson. We made an offer. He declined. In fact, he immediately reported our approach to you, Captain, demonstrating exactly the kind of integrity Starfleet claims to value. Benson smiled without warmth. Yet here we are, with intelligence suggesting he's some kind of planted asset. Ironic, isn't it? You're not denying Section 31's interest in him, Tomalak observed. Of course not. He's a tactically proficient unknown with enhanced physiology and no documented loyalties. We'd be negligent not to take interest. Benson moved to the conference table, uninvited, and sat casually. But unlike you, Commander, we recognize when someone has made their position clear. Mr. Wilson chose transparency over expedience. That tells us everything we need to know about his character. Counselor Troy spoke for the first time, her voice carrying the careful neutrality of someone navigating dangerous emotional currents. I'm sensing considerable hostility in this room. Perhaps we should focus on facts rather than accusations. An excellent suggestion, Counselor, Picard said, retaking his seat. Facts. Mr. Wilson arrived through a quantum anomaly. Fact. He has cooperated fully with our investigation. Fact. He risked his life to save Federation colonists without expectation of reward. These are the facts that matter to me. And the fact that his cooperation includes combat skills that rival Starfleet Special Operations personnel? Tomalak pressed. The fact that his enhanced healing and reflexes suggest genetic or technological augmentation far beyond anything we've encountered? In my universe, I was enhanced through a military program, Slade interjected, tired of being discussed like he wasn't present. The process increased my brain's processing capacity, improved my reflexes, and gave me a healing factor. I was a soldier. Then I became independent. That's all there is to it. That's all there is to it, Tomalak repeated skeptically. A super soldier from another dimension, conveniently appearing when Section 31 needs exactly that kind of asset. Commander, Benson interrupted, his casual tone hardening slightly. You're seeing patterns that don't exist. We didn't orchestrate Mr. Wilson's arrival. We couldn't have. The quantum mechanics alone are beyond our current capabilities. We simply recognized an opportunity and made an offer. He refused. End of story. Is it? Tomalak leaned forward on the screen. Because I'm looking at reports of unusual subspace distortions near the Argolis cluster dating back 3 weeks before Mr. Wilson's appearance. Distortions consistent with experimental dimensional technology. The kind of technology Section 31 has been researching. The room went very quiet. Picard turned to Benson with an expression that could have frozen plasma. Commander Benson, did Section 31 have anything to do with the quantum anomaly that brought Mr. Wilson to this universe? Benson met the captain's gaze steadily. No. We monitor such phenomena, but we didn't create it. The subspace distortions Commander Tomalak references are unrelated, residual effects from a completely different project. Which project? Picard demanded. Classified. As you well know, Captain. Slade had heard enough. This is fascinating, watching you people argue about conspiracies and jurisdictions. But none of it changes my situation. I'm stuck here until someone figures out how to send me home. Whether you trust me or not is irrelevant. I can't leave, so you're dealing with me regardless. Not entirely true, Data said quietly. Everyone turned to the android. Lieutenant Commander LaForge and I have made progress analyzing your quantum signature. We believe we can reconstruct the dimensional frequency within 2 weeks, possibly less. The question is whether we have the power source necessary to actually open a stable portal. What kind of power source are we talking about? Slade asked. Approximately 17,000 terawatts sustained for 4.7 seconds. The Enterprise's warp core could theoretically provide this, but the strain would risk catastrophic failure. We would need either a purpose-built facility or... Data hesitated. Access to experimental power generation technology not currently available to Starfleet science, but available to Section 31, Slade said, understanding immediately. Benson's smile was small and knowing. We have resources, as I mentioned during our previous conversation. Absolutely not, Picard said firmly. Mr. Wilson will not be leveraged into cooperation with an extra-legal intelligence organization, regardless of the incentive. We will find another solution. How? Tomalak challenged. Starfleet science hasn't successfully executed an interdimensional transfer in controlled conditions in 15 years. The last attempt resulted in the loss of the USS Pegasus and 71 crew members. You're going to risk that for one man. I'm going to uphold Starfleet's principles, Picard shot back, which include not abandoning people who've helped us simply because it's convenient. Counselor Troy closed her eyes, her empathic senses clearly overwhelmed by the emotional cross-currents in the room. Captain, I'm sensing something we're all missing. Mr. Wilson, what do you want? Everyone looked at Slade. He considered the question carefully. What did he want? To go home, obviously. To return to a universe he understood, where the rules made sense and violence was an acceptable solution. But something had shifted during his time on Enterprise. These people, with their naive idealism and frustrating principles, had treated him with more genuine respect than most of his employers ever had. I want to go home, Slade said finally. But not at the cost of becoming someone's asset. I've played that game too many times. It always ends badly. Then you understand our concern, Tomalak said. A man with your skills, no allegiances, potentially permanent presence in our universe. You're a variable we can't control. I don't need to be controlled. I need to be left alone to live my life. Slade stood, addressing both Tomalak and Benson. You both want me to be something I'm not. She wants me to be a threat so she can justify surveillance. You want me to be an asset so you can exploit my skills. I'm neither. I'm just trying to get home. And if you can't, Benson asked quietly. The question hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Because that was the real issue, wasn't it? If the dimensional portal couldn't be opened, if Slade was stranded permanently, what then? What did a mercenary soldier do in a universe that had supposedly evolved beyond the need for people like him? If I can't go home, Slade said slowly, then I'll figure out how to exist here. On my terms. Not yours, not Starfleet's, not anyone's, but mine. Picard studied him for a long moment. And what would those terms look like, Mr. Wilson? Honestly, I don't know yet, Captain. Slade moved toward the door. But I know I'm not interested in being recruited by shadow organizations or treated like a criminal by intelligence. I helped at Tavola Minor because it needed doing. If similar situations arise, I'll probably help again. But I won't be owned. Not by Section 31, not by Starfleet, not by anyone. That's not how societies function, Tomalak objected. Everyone has obligations, responsibilities. Then I'll exist outside your society, Slade interrupted. There are frontier worlds, independent stations, places where someone with my skills can operate without answering to bureaucrats and intelligence committees. I've done it before. That sounds like a lonely existence, Counselor Troy observed gently. Slade met her eyes, seeing the genuine empathy there. Counselor, I've been alone most of my life. I'm comfortable with it. He left the conference room before anyone could respond, the door hissing shut on arguments and accusations. In the corridor, he leaned against the wall, exhaustion pulling at him. Not physical. His shoulder was healing well, but mental. The weight of being constantly evaluated, constantly suspected, constantly forced to justify his existence. His combadge chirped. Worf's voice. Wilson. Report to holodeck 2. We have unfinished business. A fight. Simple, straightforward, honest. Exactly what Slade needed. He smiled grimly and headed for the holodeck. The holodeck had been configured as a Klingon training hall. Rough stone walls, weapons racks displaying traditional blades, and ambient lighting that cast dramatic shadows across the space. Worf stood in the center, stripped to a simple combat tunic, holding 2 batleths. He tossed one to Slade as he entered. No safety protocols this time, the Klingon growled. You wanted honesty. You will have it. Slade caught the blade, testing its weight. You heard the conference room discussion. The entire ship heard the conference room discussion. Starfleet intelligence is not subtle when making accusations. Worf settled into a combat stance. They question your loyalty, your motives, your very presence. And you? What do you question? Nothing. Worf's response was immediate and definitive. You fought at Tavola Minor. You saved children while risking your own life. These are the actions of a warrior, not a spy or infiltrator. Words are wind. Actions reveal truth. It was perhaps the most straightforward endorsement Slade had received since arriving in this universe. No qualifications, no diplomatic hedging, just Klingon directness. Thank you, Lieutenant. Do not thank me. Prove me correct. Worf attacked without further preamble. The batleths rang together with the sound of violent bells, the impact reverberating through Slade's arms. Worf fought differently this time. No holding back, no consideration for injury. This was combat as the Klingon understood it. Total commitment, absolute honesty, the truth found only when death is possible. Slade adapted, his enhanced reflexes compensating for Worf's superior strength. They circled, struck, parried, each exchange teaching volumes about the other's character. Worf fought with disciplined fury, every movement purposeful. Slade fought with calculated efficiency, wasting nothing. You fight well for a human, Worf observed between exchanges. I'm not entirely human anymore. Not after the enhancements. Then you understand what it means to be caught between worlds. Neither fully one thing nor another. Worf pressed forward with a series of aggressive strikes. Klingon raised in the Federation faced this constantly. Too violent for humans, too civilized for traditional Klingon. Slade deflected a strike aimed at his ribs, countering with a sweep at Worf's legs that the Klingon jumped over with surprising agility. You seem to have found balance. Balance is a lie we tell ourselves to pretend we are not compromised. Worf's next strike came faster, anger fueling it. I serve in Starfleet, follow their rules, pretend their way is superior. But in my heart, I know the truth. Sometimes violence is the only answer. Sometimes honor demands blood. They broke apart, both breathing hard. Slade studied the Klingon with new understanding. Worf wasn't just Enterprise's security chief. He was a warrior trapped in a philosopher's role, constantly suppressing his instincts to fit Starfleet's ideals. That's why you challenged me, Slade said. You needed to fight someone who wouldn't judge you for it. Perhaps. Worf circled, batleth ready. Or perhaps I needed to test whether you were worthy of the respect you demand. And you have not disappointed me yet, Slade Wilson. Do not start now. They clashed again, and this time Slade pushed harder, testing Worf's limits. The Klingon responded with escalating ferocity, their battle becoming almost a dance. Violent, graceful, honest. For 10 minutes they fought, neither gaining decisive advantage, both finding release in the pure simplicity of combat. Finally, Worf called a halt, setting aside his batleth with obvious reluctance. Enough. We are evenly matched, and I have duties to attend to. Slade lowered his own blade, surprised to find himself genuinely sorry the fight was ending. Same time tomorrow? A slight smile crossed Worf's severe features. You are beginning to think like a Klingon. This is either progress or dangerous. As they exited the holodeck, they found Data waiting in the corridor, his expression suggesting urgency. Mr. Wilson, Lieutenant Worf, Captain Picard requires your presence on the bridge immediately. We have received a distress call from a cargo vessel claiming to be under attack by unexpected hostiles. What kind of hostiles? Worf asked, already moving toward the turbolift. The vessel's captain described them as cybernetic beings that assimilate other life forms into their collective. Based on their description, the Borg, Worf said, his voice dropping to something between a growl and genuine fear. Slade caught the reaction. I take it the Borg are bad news. The Borg are an existential threat, Data explained as they entered the turbolift. A collective consciousness of cybernetic organisms that assimilate entire civilizations into their hive mind. They operate on the principle that resistance is futile. The Enterprise has encountered them before. Many crew members died. The turbolift doors opened onto the bridge, revealing organized chaos. Picard stood at the center, issuing orders with clipped precision. The view screen showed a small cargo vessel being pursued by a massive cube. Geometric perfection rendered in dark metal and pulsing green energy. Report, Mr. Data. Picard ordered without turning. The cargo vessel SS Callisto is being pursued by a Borg scout cube. The cube has not yet achieved weapons lock, but they are closing rapidly. The Callisto's maximum speed is warp 3, insufficient to outrun Borg pursuit. Time to intercept? 12 minutes at maximum warp. Picard's jaw tightened. Not fast enough. They'll be assimilated before we arrive. He turned to Worf. Options. We could attempt to disable the cube's propulsion systems with a long-range torpedo spread, but accuracy at this distance would be poor. More likely we would simply provoke the cube into accelerating their assimilation process. Slade moved to the tactical console, studying the display. The cube was approximately 3 times Enterprise's size, bristling with technology he didn't recognize. But the pursuit pattern was predictable. The Borg were following a direct intercept course, no evasive maneuvers, absolute confidence in their superiority. Arrogance. He could work with arrogance. Captain, let me talk to the cargo vessel, Slade said. Every eye on the bridge turned to him. Picard's expression was skeptical. To what end, Mr. Wilson? The Borg are overconfident. They're not expecting the cargo ship to fight back. If we can get the Callisto's crew to buy us 2 minutes, just 2 minutes, we can change the tactical situation. The Callisto is a civilian cargo vessel with minimal defensive capabilities, Riker objected. What could they possibly do against a Borg cube? They don't need to destroy it. They just need to slow it down. Slade pointed to the display. That cube is maintaining a steady pursuit vector. If the cargo ship suddenly changes course at maximum impulse and floods their wake with plasma from their warp core, it'll create a temporary interference field. The Borg will adapt within 30 seconds, but those 30 seconds let you close the distance. You arrive while they're still adapting. Hit them with everything you've got before they can respond. Data's head tilted, processing. The tactic is operationally sound. Borg adaptation cycles typically require 23 to 31 seconds when encountering novel electromagnetic interference. The plasma wake would indeed provide sufficient disruption. It's also asking civilian crew members to risk their warp core stability to buy us seconds, Picard said. If the plasma venting destabilizes. They die either way if we don't try, Slade interrupted. Assimilated or dead, Captain. Those are their options. At least this way they're fighting. The bridge was silent except for the steady beep of sensors and the hum of the warp engines. Picard stared at the view screen, the weight of command evident in every line of his posture. Finally, he nodded. Open a channel to the Callisto. Let's see if they're willing to take the risk. The cargo vessel's captain appeared on screen, a weathered human woman with the 1,000-yard stare of someone who'd already accepted death. Enterprise, this is Captain Torres of the Callisto. We're not going to outrun them, are we? No. Captain, you're not, Picard said with brutal honesty. But we have a plan that might save your crew. It requires you to perform an emergency course change and vent plasma from your warp core into your wake. The procedure is dangerous, but we'll do it, Torres interrupted. Tell us when and how. Anything's better than becoming one of those things. Data transmitted the technical specifications while Slade explained the timing. You'll need to maintain the plasma vent for exactly 23 seconds. Any longer, and you risk core breach. The moment you complete the maneuver, Enterprise will engage the cube. Stay on your new course at maximum impulse until we signal all clear. Torres listened, her jaw set with determination. Understood. We're a cargo hauler, not a warship, but damned if we'll go down without a fight. That's the spirit, Captain, Slade said. When you're ready. The view screen split, showing both the cargo vessel and the approaching Borg cube. Enterprise accelerated to maximum warp, eating the distance, but not fast enough. The cube was seconds from overtaking the Callisto. Now, Slade called. The cargo vessel suddenly veered 30 degrees port, its impulse engines flaring. Simultaneously, brilliant blue-white plasma erupted from its nacelles, flooding space with ionized particles. The Borg cube plowed directly into the plasma cloud, its perfect trajectory disrupted by the electromagnetic interference. They're adapting, Data reported, watching sensor feeds. Modulation frequencies shifting to compensate. 27 seconds until full adaptation. Helm, maximum impulse the moment we drop from warp, Picard ordered. Mr. Worf, ready all phaser banks and photon torpedoes. Target their propulsion nodes. Enterprise dropped from warp in a blaze of speed, the massive starship decelerating with the controlled violence of skilled helmsmanship. The Borg cube was still partially obscured by the plasma cloud, its sensors clearly struggling with the interference. Fire, Picard commanded. Phaser beams and photon torpedoes hammered the cube's surface, orange and blue energy tearing into alien technology. The Borg vessel shuddered under the assault, sections of its hull buckling. But even as Enterprise poured fire into the target, green energy began lancing back, return fire as the cube adapted to the attack. Shields holding, Worf reported. The cube has adapted to our phaser frequency, rotating to alternate frequencies. Torpedoes, continuous spread, Picard ordered. Keep them off balance. The battle became a brutal exchange. Enterprise's superior maneuverability versus the cube's raw power and adaptive shields. Slade watched from the tactical station, noting patterns in the Borg's defensive response. They adapted quickly but methodically, prioritizing threats based on damage inflicted. Which meant, Captain, concentrate all fire on one facing, Slade suggested. They're spreading their adaptive shields across all damaged sections. If you overwhelm one specific area before they can compensate, Mr. Worf, focus all weapons on grid section 273. Picard ordered, trusting the tactical advice. Every weapon Enterprise possessed hammered into a 3-meter square section of the cube's hull. For 5 seconds, nothing seemed to happen. Then the shields in that section flickered, overloaded by concentrated fire. The next torpedo punched through, detonating inside the cube itself. Secondary explosions rippled across the Borg vessel's interior. The cube's pursuit of the Callisto faltered as it diverted power to damage control and adaptation. They're breaking off, Data reported. The cube is retreating. Do not pursue. Picard ordered immediately. Helm, position us between the cube and the Callisto. Maintain yellow alert. The cube withdrew at high warp, disappearing into subspace with that eerie Borg efficiency. The bridge crew released a collective breath they hadn't realized they were holding. Status of the Callisto? Picard asked. Intact, Captain. Their warp core is stable. Captain Torres is hailing us. Torres' image reappeared, her expression somewhere between relieved and disbelieving. Enterprise, thank you. I never thought. I mean, we're just a cargo hauler. Nobody important. Every life is important, Captain, Picard said with absolute conviction. You and your crew displayed remarkable courage. Well done. After the channel closed, Picard turned to Slade. That was quick thinking, Mr. Wilson. Unconventional tactics from a conventional mind. In my universe, we learned early that superior technology doesn't guarantee victory. Adaptation, creativity, willingness to take risks, those win battles. Slade studied the empty space where the Borg cube had been. Those things you fought, the Borg, they're dangerous. More than you know, Worf said grimly. They assimilated Captain Picard once. Turned him into their spokesman. It took enormous sacrifice to get him back. Slade looked at Picard with new respect. The captain had faced literal assimilation into a hive mind, lost his autonomy and identity, yet stood here commanding with the same principled conviction. That kind of resilience was rare. Then you understand what it means to fight something that doesn't negotiate, doesn't compromise, just consumes, Slade said quietly. In my world, I dealt with threats like that regularly. Maybe that's why your Federation makes me nervous. You've built a society that assumes everyone can be reasoned with. But some threats can't be reasoned with. They can only be destroyed. A philosophy that leads to endless conflict, Picard countered. The Federation endures because we seek alternatives to destruction. And when there are no alternatives, then we do what we must. But we never stop searching for better options. Picard gestured to the empty view screen. Today, your tactical insights save lives without requiring us to destroy the Borg cube. A better outcome than mutual annihilation. Slade had no response to that. In his experience, temporary victories just delayed inevitable confrontation. But maybe, just maybe, this universe operated differently. The bridge door opened, admitting Commander Benson. Somehow, the Section 31 operative had gotten aboard again, and somehow nobody looked surprised. Captain Picard, Mr. Wilson, apologies for the intrusion, but I thought you should know. The Borg cube you just engaged? It wasn't here by accident. Long-range sensors detected unusual subspace distortions near its approach vector. Distortions consistent with interdimensional transit. Everyone turned to stare at Slade. You think the Borg are interested in dimensional technology, Slade said slowly. And they tracked me here. We think the Borg are interested in anything that enhances their collective. Your arrival created a quantum signature unlike anything in this universe. If the Borg detected it, Benson shrugged. Well, you represent something they've never assimilated before. That makes you valuable to them. Which means, Picard said, his voice dangerously quiet, Mr. Wilson has become a target for the single most dangerous force in the galaxy. Wonderful. Slade met the captain's gaze steadily. Then I guess we'd better figure out how to send me home before they come back with reinforcements. Agreed, Picard said. Commander Data, Mr. LaForge, your dimensional portal project just became our highest priority. Mr. Wilson, I suggest you prepare yourself. Because if the Borg want you, they won't stop with one cube. In the background, the view screen showed empty space where the battle had occurred. But Slade knew better than to trust the emptiness. Somewhere in the darkness, the Borg were adapting, analyzing, planning. And they never gave up. The diplomatic reception on Starbase 234 was exactly the kind of event Slade hated. Carefully orchestrated small talk, political maneuvering disguised as pleasantries, and enough forced smiles to power a small city. But Picard had insisted, and after the Borg incident, Slade was trying to demonstrate he could function in civilized society without shooting something. It wasn't going well. So you're the dimensional refugee everyone's talking about, said a Balian ambassador with two bright eyes and the conversational subtlety of a disruptor on full auto. Fascinating. Tell me, in your universe, do you have replicators? Transporters? Warp drive? We have violence, poverty, and people who ask too many questions, Slade replied, taking a drink from a passing server. Some things are universal. The Balian laughed nervously and excused himself. Counselor Troy materialized at Slade's elbow, her expression somewhere between amused and exasperated. You're supposed to be building bridges, Mr. Wilson, not burning them. I'm a mercenary, counselor, not a diplomat. Captain Picard knew what he was getting when he invited me. Slade scanned the crowd, noting exits, security positions, potential threats. Old habits. He invited you because Starfleet Command is hosting several delegations interested in dimensional mechanics. Your presence legitimizes the research and demonstrates we're not hiding anything. Troy followed his gaze. You're looking for threats. At a diplomatic reception, there are always threats. They just wear better clothes at events like this. As if summoning fate through cynicism, the reception room's doors opened to admit a delegation Slade recognized from Data's cultural briefings, Romulans. Tall, elegant, with pointed ears and expressions that promised daggers hidden beneath silk robes. They moved through the crowd with predatory grace, and every Starfleet officer in the room tensed imperceptibly. The Romulans weren't on the guest list, Troy murmured, her empathic senses clearly working overtime. The Romulan delegation's leader made directly for Picard, who received them with diplomatic courtesy that couldn't quite hide his wariness. Words were exchanged, too quiet for Slade to hear over the ambient noise, but body language spoke volumes. The Romulans wanted something, and Picard wasn't inclined to provide it. Then the Romulan leader's eyes found Slade across the room. Counselor, Slade said quietly. I think I just became the center of attention. The Romulan approached with measured steps, flanked by two guards trying very hard to look like diplomatic aides. Up close, she was striking, sharp features, calculating eyes, the bearing of someone accustomed to command. I am Commander Torith of the Romulan Imperial Fleet, she said without preamble. You are the dimensional refugee, Slade Wilson. That's what they tell me. How interesting. A soldier from another reality, stranded in ours through quantum accident. The Tal Shir has been following your situation with considerable interest. Torith's smile was sharp enough to cut. We find it curious that such a tactically valuable individual appeared so conveniently aboard a Federation starship. Your intelligence service sees conspiracies in everything, Slade replied. Must be exhausting. Our intelligence service sees opportunities where others see coincidence. Torith gestured to the crowd around them. The Federation treats you as a curiosity, a problem to solve. We would treat you as an asset, Mr. Wilson. Your skills, your knowledge of alternate dimensional physics, your enhanced physiology, all valuable in ways Starfleet's principles prevent them from exploiting. Let me guess, you're offering me a job. I'm offering you respect. The Romulan Empire values strength, cunning, and pragmatism. We do not waste time pretending violence is obsolete or that idealism solves practical problems. You would find our approach familiar. Before Slade could respond, Picard appeared at his shoulder with the timing of someone who'd been monitoring the conversation closely. Commander Torith, I'm sure you understand that Mr. Wilson is a guest of the Federation, not a commodity to be recruited. Captain Picard, always the idealist. Torith's smile didn't waver. I'm simply having a conversation with an interesting individual. Surely the Federation's vaunted principles include freedom of speech. They do. They also include protection of refugees from coercive recruitment by foreign powers. The temperature in the conversation dropped 20 degrees. Torith studied Picard with the cold assessment of a chess player evaluating an opponent. Very well, Captain. But perhaps Mr. Wilson should know all his options before committing to Starfleet's hospitality. She withdrew with her guards, leaving behind the diplomatic equivalent of a dropped grenade. Every conversation in the immediate vicinity had stopped, all attention focused on the confrontation. That could have gone better, Slade observed. That could have gone considerably worse, Picard corrected. The Romulans making an open recruitment attempt at a Federation starbase? They're either desperate or testing our response. Neither option is encouraging. Troy's expression had gone distant, her empathic abilities clearly overwhelmed. Captain, I'm sensing something wrong. The emotional undercurrents in this room have shifted. There's anticipation, excitement, like everyone's waiting for. The lights went out. Emergency lighting activated immediately, bathing the reception hall in eerie red. Slade's combat instincts took over. Drop into a crouch, scan for threats, identify nearest cover. Around him, Starfleet personnel were doing the same with admirable discipline, while civilian diplomats panicked. Security to reception hall. Picard commanded into his comm badge. Report. Static. Communications are jammed. Data's voice came from across the room, the android somehow navigating the chaos with perfect precision. The jamming signature is consistent with Romulan technology. Phaser fire erupted from the far end of the hall. Green disruptor bolts that Slade recognized from Tavila Minor. Screams filled the darkness. People went down, stunned or worse. The Romulan guards who'd accompanied Torith were firing with professional efficiency, creating a corridor of suppressive fire. Towards Slade. They're not here for diplomacy, Slade said, drawing the type. 2 phaser Worf had reluctantly authorized him to carry. They're here for extraction. Mine. Unacceptable, Picard growled, drawing his own weapon. Mr. Data, protect the civilians. Counselor Troy, get to safety. Mr. Wilson. I know the drill, Captain. Don't get captured, don't get killed, try not to start an interstellar incident. Slade moved toward cover, his enhanced reflexes tracking the Romulan attack pattern. 6 shooters, coordinated fire, creating a perimeter. Professional snatch and grab operation. Worf appeared from somewhere in the chaos, batleth in hand, roaring a Klingon battle cry that made the emergency lighting seem inadequate. He crashed into the Romulan line like a living avalanche, the batleth spinning in lethal arcs. 2 Romulans went down before they could adjust their fire. But more were coming. The doors had been sealed, Romulan doing, and reinforcements were flooding in from hidden positions. This wasn't opportunistic. This was planned, coordinated, using the diplomatic reception as cover for a military operation. "Captain, we need to break the jamming," Data called, firing his phaser with mechanical precision. "I can reach the communications relay if..." An explosion rocked the far wall. Not destructive, but concussive, a breaching charge. Through the smoke stepped a figure in powered armor that made Slade's damaged suit look primitive. Romulan military tech, heavy assault configuration, designed for exactly this kind of scenario. Commander Torith's voice echoed from the armor's external speakers. "Mr. Wilson, you can surrender peacefully and avoid unnecessary bloodshed, or we can take you by force. The Tal-Shir does not make offers lightly, and we do not accept refusal gracefully." Slade assessed the tactical situation in microseconds. Enterprise was docked at the starbase, but getting to it meant fighting through however many Romulans Torith had brought. The starbase security was responding, but the jamming and sealed doors meant reinforcements were delayed. Picard and his crew would fight, but against powered armor and superior numbers, casualties were inevitable. Or he could go with Torith, end the immediate threat, by time to escape later. "No," Picard said, reading Slade's expression. "We don't negotiate with kidnappers, and we don't abandon our people. I'm not your people, Captain. I'm a refugee you're trying to help. There's a difference." "Not to me there isn't." The stubborn idealism in Picard's voice was both inspiring and infuriating. This man would risk his crew, risk an interstellar incident, risk everything for a principle. In Slade's universe, such thinking got you killed. Here, it defined what Starfleet stood for. "Your choice, Mr. Wilson," Torith called. "Come peacefully, or we start executing hostages until you comply. You have 10 seconds. Slade looked at the terrified civilians huddled behind overturned tables. Looked at Picard, standing ready to fight despite the odds. Looked at Worf, already bleeding from a disruptor graze but still defiant. He'd spent his entire life making cold calculations, choosing the practical over the principled. But something about this universe, these people, made him want to be better than he was. "Captain," Slade said quietly, "I'm going to do something tactically stupid and probably suicidal. Try to keep up." Before Picard could respond, Slade vaulted over the cover and sprinted directly at the powered armor. Torith fired, disruptor bolts tracking his movement, but his enhanced reflexes made him a nearly impossible target. He zigzagged, rolled, used panicked diplomats as moving cover in ways that would have gotten him court-martialed in Starfleet. Torith's armor was impressive but had one critical weakness. It was designed to fight at range, overwhelming opponents with superior firepower. In close quarters, against someone with enhanced strength and speed, the armor became a liability. Slade reached the armor and leaped, using a fallen table as a springboard. He landed on Torith's back, phaser pressed against the armor's power coupling joint. "Tell your people to stand down, or I fry your power supply, and you become a very expensive coffin. You wouldn't dare. Kill me, and you'll never leave this station alive. Commander, I've survived situations that would make your Tal-Shir handlers weep. Killing you doesn't scare me. What scares me is having to live in a universe where armed kidnapping at diplomatic receptions becomes acceptable." Slade increased the phaser's power setting. "Stand down." For 5 eternal seconds, nothing happened. Then Torith's armor speakers crackled with orders in Romulan. The disruptor fire ceased. The Romulan forces began withdrawing with disciplined precision. "This isn't over, Mr. Wilson," Torith said, her voice tight with controlled rage. "The Tal-Shir has invested considerable resources in acquiring you. We will have another opportunity." "Looking forward to it," Slade lied, dismounting from the armor. Torith and her forces withdrew through the breached wall, disappearing into the starbase maintenance corridors before station security could mount effective pursuit. The reception hall was a disaster. Overturned furniture, unconscious diplomats, scorch marks on elegant walls. Picard holstered his phaser, surveying the damage with an expression of carefully controlled fury. "Mr. Data, restore communications and inform Starbase Command of what just occurred." This was an act of war disguised as criminal action. "The Romulan government will answer for it." "Diplomatically, Captain?" Data asked, extremely diplomatically, which means they'll escape consequences while we file formal protests. Picard turned to Slade. That was reckless. That was effective. Reckless and effective are not mutually exclusive. But Picard's expression softened slightly. Thank you for not surrendering. The precedent would have been problematic. Worf approached, blood streaming from a cut above his eye, looking more satisfied than injured. You fight with cunning, Wilson, using the enemy's strength against them. Very Klingon. I'll take that as a compliment. As station security flooded the hall and medical teams began treating the wounded, Counselor Troy pulled Slade aside. Her expression was serious, worried in ways that made his instincts scream warnings. Mr. Wilson, I need you to understand something. The Romulans don't give up. If the Talshire wants you, they'll keep trying. And next time, they might not be so direct. So what do you suggest, Counselor? I suggest you seriously consider whether staying in Federation space is worth the risk. Not just to you, but to everyone around you. The Borg want to assimilate you. The Romulans want to recruit you. Section 31 wants to exploit you. You've become a catalyst for exactly the kind of conflict Starfleet was designed to prevent. Slade had been thinking the same thing, but hearing it spoken aloud made it real. He was dangerous not because of what he could do, but because of what he represented, an unknown variable that every power structure wanted to control or eliminate. Maybe you're right, he said quietly. Maybe the best thing I can do is disappear until Data and LaForge finish the dimensional portal. Lay low, avoid attention, stop being everyone's prize. That would be the prudent course, Troy agreed. But I sense you're not inclined toward prudence. No, Counselor, I'm really not. Because disappearing, hiding, running, those were survival tactics. And Slade Wilson had spent too many years surviving to settle for it now. If the Romulans wanted him, they'd have to earn it. If the Borg wanted to assimilate him, they'd discover he was a much tougher target than they anticipated. And if Section 31 thought they could manipulate him into becoming their asset, they were about to learn that some weapons refused to be aimed. Enterprise left Starbase 234 under full impulse power, Picard having decided that remaining docked after the Romulan incident was tactically unsound. The ship now patrolled the border of Federation space, officially conducting scientific surveys, while unofficially staying mobile and unpredictable. Slade spent most of his time in engineering with Data and LaForge, watching them work on the dimensional portal calculations with the dedication of artists perfecting a masterpiece. The engineering section was a controlled chaos of activity, crew members routing power through experimental configurations, testing theoretical models against quantum mechanics that made Slade's head hurt. The primary challenge, LaForge explained, adjusting his visor to examine a holographic projection of dimensional frequencies, is that we're essentially trying to punch a hole through reality itself. The energy requirements are astronomical, and the margin for error is approximately zero. Get the dimensional frequency wrong by even 0.001%, and we could send you to a completely different universe. Or worse, scatter your molecules across multiple dimensions simultaneously. That's encouraging, Slade said dryly. I prefer honesty over false optimism, Data replied, his fingers dancing across a control console. However, I am pleased to report that we have successfully isolated your quantum signature and mapped it to a 97.3% accuracy. The remaining variables involve power generation and temporal synchronization, meaning we need to open the portal at precisely the right moment, when the dimensional barriers are naturally weakest, and maintain it for exactly 4.7 seconds. Too short, and you won't fully transition. Too long, and the energy feedback could damage the ship's warp core. Data looked up from his console. It is, as Chief Engineer LaForge would say, cutting it close. The engineering bay's doors opened, admitting Picard and an unfamiliar officer, a Vulcan woman in science blue with the insignia of a commander. She moved with that characteristic Vulcan precision, her expression neutral, but her eyes sharp with intelligence. Mr. Wilson, this is Commander Tran from Starfleet Science, Picard introduced. She's been assigned to review the Dimensional Portal project and ensure it meets safety protocols. Slade's instincts prickled. Since when does a routine engineering project require oversight from Starfleet Science? Since that project involves tearing holes in space-time, and potentially creating interdimensional instabilities that could affect the entire sector, Tavran replied, her voice carrying that Vulcan inflection that made even friendly statements sound like criticism. Captain Picard has provided me with the research data. The theoretical foundation is sound, but I have concerns about the practical implementation. LaForge bristled. Commander, Data and I have triple-checked every calculation. The dimensional portal will work. I do not doubt your competence, Commander LaForge. I doubt the wisdom of proceeding with an experiment this dangerous without exhaustive testing. The potential for catastrophic failure is significant. Tavran moved to the holographic display, her fingers manipulating the data with practiced ease. Furthermore, I question whether Mr. Wilson's presence in our universe is truly accidental. The engineering bay went quiet except for the hum of the warp core. Explain, Picard said, his tone dangerously calm. Tavran pulled up a series of subspace readings, displaying them in three-dimensional space. I have reviewed the sensor logs from Mr. Wilson's arrival. The quantum fissure that delivered him appeared in an area of space with no prior history of dimensional instabilities. The probability of such an event occurring naturally is approximately 1 in 743 trillion. Unlikely events occur, Data observed. Probability does not preclude possibility. Correct. However, when combined with other factors, the subsequent Borg interest, the Romulan recruitment attempt, Section 31's immediate engagement, the pattern suggests something more than chance. Tavran's gaze settled on Slade. I propose an alternative hypothesis. Mr. Wilson's arrival was engineered, either by forces in his universe or ours, for purposes we have yet to determine. Slade felt every eye in engineering turn toward him. The accusation hung in the air like a primed photon torpedo. You're suggesting I'm a plant, he said flatly. I am suggesting the circumstances of your arrival warrant deeper investigation before we expend significant resources and risk returning you to your origin point. Tavran pulled up another display. This one showing Slade's enhanced physiology data from Dr. Crusher's examinations. Your augmentations are sophisticated beyond anything we've encountered. The healing factor, the enhanced neural processing, the physical capabilities, all suggest a level of bioengineering that rivals or exceeds Federation capabilities. In my universe, I told you, I was part of a military enhancement program, which you have provided no verifiable evidence for, as verification is impossible across dimensional boundaries. Tavran's logic was inexorable, crushing. I am not accusing you of deception, Mr. Wilson. I am stating that we have no way to confirm your claims, and proceeding on faith alone is illogical when the stakes include potential universal destabilization. Picard stepped between Tavran and Slade, his diplomatic instincts recognizing a situation spiraling toward confrontation. Commander Tavran, while I appreciate your thoroughness, Mr. Wilson has proven himself through actions, not words. He saved colonists at Tavala Minor. He fought alongside us against the Borg. He refused Romulan recruitment at personal risk. These are not the actions of an infiltrator. They are also not evidence of his origin claims being accurate, Tavran countered. Captain, I understand your desire to help this individual. It speaks well of Starfleet's values. But values without logic lead to catastrophic errors in judgment. And logic without compassion leads to inhumanity. Picard shot back. Data raised one hand, the gesture oddly childlike for someone so intellectually formidable. If I may interject, both positions have merit. Commander Tavran is correct that we cannot verify Mr. Wilson's claims with certainty. Captain Picard is equally correct that his actions demonstrate character consistent with his stated identity. Perhaps we are asking the wrong question, which is, LaForge asked, whether verification matters. Regardless of how or why Mr. Wilson arrived, he is here now. He represents a potential security threat to multiple parties, making him a target for exploitation or elimination. Sending him home, assuming his stated origin is accurate, removes that variable from our universe. If his story is false, and he is indeed some form of infiltrator, sending him back removes the infiltration. Either way, completing the dimensional portal serves our interests. Tavran considered this with visible calculation. An elegant solution. If Mr. Wilson is genuine, we help him. If he is not, we remove a potential threat. The logic is sound. I'm standing right here, Slade said, anger bleeding through his controlled tone. Discussing me like I'm a tactical problem to solve instead of a person. You are both, Fran replied without malice. That is the complexity of your situation. Before Slade could respond, the ship's red alert klaxon shattered the tension. Worf's voice boomed through the intercom. All hands to battle stations. 3 Klingon birds of prey decloaking off the port bow. They are hailing us. Picard was already moving toward the door. On my way? Mr. Wilson, you should. I'll stay in engineering, Slade interrupted. I know when I'm not wanted on the bridge. Picard paused, something like regret crossing his features. That's not. Captain, your bridge. Go. Picard left with Fran, leaving Slade alone with Data and LaForge. The chief engineer looked uncomfortable, clearly torn between professional duty and personal sympathy. For what it's worth, LaForge said, I believe you. The way you fight, the way you think, that's not programming. That's experience. Thanks, Geordi. Slade moved to an engineering console, pulling up the external sensor feed. On screen, 3 Klingon vessels hung in space, weapons powered but not targeting. A parley then. Data, what do the Klingon want? Unknown. However, I am detecting a 4th vessel maintaining cloak at extreme sensor range. A Deathstroke warbird. Romulan. Slade's tactical instincts screamed warnings. The Klingon are a distraction. The Romulans are using them to get close while Enterprise is focused elsewhere. An astute observation, Data agreed, already working his console. I am informing the bridge. On the sensor feed, Slade watched the tactical situation develop with the detachment of a professional evaluating someone else's operation. The Klingon birds of prey were maintaining formation, not aggressive but clearly ready for combat. The cloaked Romulan warbird was slowly repositioning, using the Klingon vessels as a sensor shadow. They're coming for me again, Slade said. The Romulans. They're using the Klingon as cover for another extraction attempt. LaForge's hands flew across his console, rerouting power to shields. We can't fight 3 birds of prey and a warbird simultaneously. The Enterprise is tough, but those are bad odds. Then we don't fight. We run. Slade studied the sensor display, calculating vectors and intercept courses. Plot a course directly toward the Klingon formation at full impulse. The Romulans won't expect you to charge their screen. You'll pass through the Klingon formation before they can react, and the warbird won't risk firing through their allies. That is tactically inadvisable, Data observed. The Klingon would interpret such a maneuver as aggression. They'd interpret it as Enterprise having bigger concerns than proper protocol. Which you do. Slade pointed to the sensor shadow where the warbird lurked. That Romulan ship is positioning for a tractor beam lock on Enterprise. They're going to grab the whole ship, board it, and extract me while the Klingon accidentally prevents Starfleet reinforcements from intervening. Data processed this for 0.3 seconds. Your tactical assessment is sound. Transmitting the course recommendation to the bridge. On the bridge, Picard listened to Worf's report with growing concern. The Klingon commander was demanding to speak with the dimensional warrior who had fought at Tavola Minor. Specifically, they wanted to issue a formal challenge. A challenge, Picard repeated. For what purpose? Honor. The Klingon commander growled from the view screen, his scarred face suggesting a lifetime of battles. This Wilson fought with cunning and strength. I am Commander Karg of House Morath. I challenge him to single combat for the right to recruit him into my house. Mr. Wilson is not available for recruitment, Picard said firmly, and I will not permit. Captain, Data's voice interrupted from engineering. I am detecting a cloaked Romulan warbird at coordinates 273 Mark V. Based on Mr. Wilson's tactical analysis, they are positioning for a boarding action using the Klingon vessels as cover. Picard's expression went from diplomatic to dangerous in microseconds. He turned to Riker. Number 1, bring us to red alert. Mr. Worf, can you confirm the Romulan vessel? Confirmed, Captain. Deathstroke warbird, cloaked but visible on tachyon sensors. They are maneuvering into tractor beam range. Picard stood, addressing the Klingon commander with barely controlled anger. Commander Karg, are you aware there is a Romulan warbird using your formation as cover? Picard's expression shifted from aggressive to outraged. What? There are no Romulans in this sector. They would not dare. He turned, barking orders in Klingon. His crew's response was immediate and furious. Captain, the Klingon vessels are breaking formation, Worf reported. They're targeting the Romulan warbird. The cloaked warbird, realizing its cover was blown, decloaked in a flash of green energy. But instead of attacking, it initiated emergency warp, fleeing at maximum speed with 3 infuriated Klingon birds of prey in pursuit. Picard allowed himself a slight smile. It seems the Romulans underestimated Klingon honor. Helm, hold position. Let's see how this plays out. Commander Picard reappeared on the view screen, his expression murderous. Captain Picard, I owe you a debt. The Romulans used my house as unwitting accomplices in their scheming. This insult will not stand. I'm glad we could clarify the situation, Commander. However, Picard continued, my challenge to Wilson stands. He is a warrior. He should fight among warriors, not play diplomat among talkers and thinkers. Tell him House Morith would welcome him with honor. Picard glanced at Riker, who shrugged slightly. I'll convey your offer, Commander. But I suspect Mr. Wilson has his own path to follow. After the channel closed, Picard headed to engineering, finding Slade exactly where he expected, at the console, having watched the entire encounter unfold. Your tactical assessment was correct, Picard said. The Romulans were attempting another extraction. How did you know? Because it's what I would have done. Use a third party as cover, strike when the target is distracted, extract before effective response can be mounted. Slade turned from the console. The Romulans think like me, Captain. That makes them predictable. Commander Karg has offered you a place in his house. A position of honor among the Klingon. Picard studied Slade carefully. It's a genuine offer, from what I know of Karg. You would be valued there in ways Starfleet struggles to accommodate. Valued as a weapon, Slade said. Just a different handler than Section 31 or the Romulans. Perhaps. Or perhaps valued as a warrior among warriors, where your skills aren't seen as a problem to manage but as strength to celebrate. Picard moved closer, his voice dropping. Mr. Wilson, Commander Tfran raised valid concerns. I cannot in good conscience ignore them, even as I believe in your fundamental honesty. If you choose to accept Karg's offer, I will not stand in your way. Slade met the captain's eyes, seeing the genuine conflict there. Picard wanted to help, believed in helping, but was being ground between his principles and his responsibilities. Captain, I appreciate the option, but I'm not interested in being anyone's honored warrior, symbolic refugee, or tactical asset. I just want to go home. Slade gestured to the dimensional calculations still running on the engineering displays. How much longer until the portal is ready? Data answered. Approximately 72 hours, assuming no complications. We will need to conduct the procedure near a stellar body to harness sufficient energy. I have identified a suitable Class G star in the Calandra system, 3 days from our current position at maximum warp. Then that's where we're going, Picard decided. Helm, set course for the Calandra system. Maximum warp. As Enterprise turned toward its destination, Slade felt the weight of multiple factions, all maneuvering for position. The Romulans wouldn't give up. Section 31 was undoubtedly planning their next move, and now the Klingons saw him as some kind of prize warrior. 3 days. He just had to survive 3 more days, and he could leave this universe behind. But something in his gut told him those would be the longest 3 days of his life. The Calandra system was unremarkable, a single Class G star orbited by 4 barren planets and an asteroid belt that had never coalesced into anything significant. Enterprise had arrived 18 hours ago, and engineering had been running non-stop preparations for the dimensional portal attempt. Slade stood in the cargo bay that had been converted into the portal chamber, watching Data and LaForge make final adjustments to the massive apparatus they'd constructed. It looked like something between a particle accelerator and a gateway to hell, concentric rings of power conduits surrounding an empty space that would, theoretically, tear open reality itself. The energy requirements are staggering, LaForge explained, running a diagnostic on the primary coupling. We're going to drain the warp core to 20% capacity, opening the portal. If anything goes wrong, if the dimensional frequency is off by even a fraction, we could blow out the entire power grid. Reassuring, Slade said. I prefer to be honest about the risks. LaForge looked at him directly. Mr. Wilson, there's something you need to understand. When we open this portal, we're not just sending you home. We're creating a wound in space-time that connects two universes. If hostile forces from your dimension detect it, they could potentially cross over. We could be opening a door we can't close. You're asking if my universe is worth the risk to yours. I'm saying the risk exists. The captain decided it's worth taking anyway, but LaForge hesitated. I wanted you to know what we're gambling. Slade had spent 2 weeks aboard Enterprise, and in that time, he'd learned something about these people. They didn't just help because it was convenient or strategically advantageous. They helped because it was right, even when it cost them, even when it endangered them. Geordi, if anything comes through that portal behind me, I'll handle it. That's my promise. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. LaForge returned to his diagnostics, leaving Slade alone with his thoughts. The cargo bay doors opened, admitting Worf in full tactical gear. The Klingon looked like he was preparing for war, which probably meant he was. The perimeter is secure, Worf reported. I have posted security teams at every access point to this bay. If the Romulans attempt another extraction, they will, Slade interrupted. This is their last chance. Once I'm gone, they lose their prize. They'll make a move. I am counting on it. Worf's smile was predatory. I have been looking for an excuse to teach the Tal Shiar about Klingon hospitality. Despite the tension, Slade smiled. You enjoy this. The fighting, the danger. I am Klingon. Battle is when we are most alive. Worf's expression grew more serious. Wilson, when you return to your universe, you will face battles we cannot help you with. I want you to know, you fought with honor here. That matters. It was perhaps the most direct compliment Slade had received in years. He extended his hand, and Worf clasped it in a grip that could have crushed steel. Try not to start a war after I'm gone, Lieutenant. I make no promises. Over the next 6 hours, the rest of the senior staff filtered through, each offering their own form of farewell. Data provided a PADED containing technical specifications for Federation technology, in case dimensional physics allow for cross-universal application of principles. Dr. Crusher gave him a medical kit with supplies calibrated for his enhanced physiology. Even Counselor Troy stopped by, her empathic abilities making the goodbye more emotionally complex than Slade was comfortable with. You're conflicted, she observed. Part of you wants to go home. Part of you has found something here worth staying for. I don't belong here, Counselor. This universe runs on rules I don't understand and principles I can't follow. Or perhaps you understand them better than you think, and that frightens you. Troy's smile was gentle. You've spent your life being a weapon, Mr. Wilson. Here, you discovered you could be more. That's terrifying for someone who's built their identity on controlled violence. Slade had no answer to that, so he said nothing. Finally, 2 hours before the scheduled portal activation, Picard arrived. The captain looked tired, the weight of command evident in every line of his posture. Mr. Wilson, are you ready? As I'll ever be. Picard handed him a small isolinear chip. This contains everything we've learned about dimensional travel, quantum mechanics, and the theoretical framework that made your return possible. If your universe has scientists capable of understanding it, this information could allow for controlled interdimensional contact in the future. You're building bridges even as I'm leaving. Hope is not a passive emotion, Mr. Wilson. It requires action, commitment, and the willingness to believe in possibilities others dismiss. Picard extended his hand. You challenged us, made us question our assumptions, confront our limitations, and remember that idealism must be tempered with pragmatism. For that, you have my gratitude. Slade shook the offered hand, surprised by how much the gesture meant. Captain, your universe is both better and more fragile than mine. People like you keep it that way. Don't ever compromise on that. I'll do my best. The cargo bay's comm system chirped. Bridge to Captain Picard. We have a problem. Everyone's heads snapped toward the speaker. Picard moved to a wall panel, activating the channel. Report. Sir, sensors are detecting multiple ships dropping out of warp at the edge of the Calandra system. 3 Romulan warbites, 2 Klingon birds of prey, and... The ensign's voice faltered. Sir, we're detecting a Borg cube. They're all converging on our position. The cargo bay went silent except for the hum of the dimensional portal apparatus. How long until they reach us? Picard demanded. The Borg cube will arrive in 17 minutes. The Romulan and Klingon vessels in 23 minutes. Slade turned to LaForge. How long until the portal is ready? 37 minutes minimum. We haven't completed the final power calibration, and rushing it could. Rushing it is our only option. Slade moved to the portal apparatus, studying the configuration with tactical assessment, overriding caution. The Borg want to assimilate me. The Romulans want to recruit me. The Klingon. I'm assuming those are Karg's ships. Confirmed, Worf said, consulting a tactical display. House Morith vessels. They are hailing us. Put them through, Picard ordered. Commander Karg's scarred face appeared on the cargo bay's view screen, his expression grave. Captain Picard. We detected the Borg cube on long-range sensors and came to offer aid. House Morith does not permit the Borg to claim anyone, let alone a warrior we have challenged for honorable recruitment. Your timing is appreciated, Commander, Picard said. However, we also have Romulan warboats inbound. This situation is deteriorating rapidly. Then we fight together. Klingon and Federation, as it should be. Karg's smile was fierce. And when the battle is won, Wilson and I will settle our challenge properly. The channel closed. Picard turned to his crew, command decisions forming with practiced efficiency. Mr. Data, how long can we delay the Borg? With Klingon assistance, approximately 12 to 15 minutes before they adapt to our combined tactics. The Romulans will likely hold position and observe, waiting for an opportunity to exploit, which gives us a window. Picard looked at LaForge. Chief, I need that portal operational in 15 minutes. Whatever corners you need to cut, cut them. Captain, if we don't complete the calibration sequence, then we risk a catastrophic failure. Understood. But if the Borg assimilate Mr. Wilson, we risk them gaining knowledge of interdimensional travel. I'll take the former risk over the latter. Picard's tone left no room for argument. LaForge nodded grimly and turned to his console, fingers flying across controls. Data, I need you on the quantum resonance calibration. We're going to do this fast and hope the math holds. The next 11 minutes were controlled chaos. Enterprise moved into defensive formation with the two Klingon birds of prey, creating a perimeter around the cargo bay. The Borg cube approached with inexorable precision, ignoring hails, ignoring warnings, simply advancing. Slade stood at the portal apparatus, watching the countdown timer LaForge had activated. 14 minutes. 13. 12. Borg cube is within weapons range. Worf reported from the tactical station he'd had installed in the cargo bay. They are scanning the Enterprise. They have detected the dimensional portal apparatus. Of course they had. The Borg didn't miss anything. They are adapting their approach vector, Worf continued. Targeting the cargo bay specifically. All power to shields, Picard ordered. Mr. Worf, return fire. Commander Karg, engage at your discretion. The ship shuddered as Borg weapons fire hammered the shields. Enterprise and the Klingon vessels returned fire with everything they had. Phasers, torpedoes, disruptors, creating a light show that would have been beautiful if it wasn't so deadly. 8 minutes on the countdown. Shields at 73%, Worf reported. The Borg are adapting to our phaser frequencies. Rotate frequencies continuously, Picard ordered. Don't give them time to adapt. The Romulan warbirds remained at the edge of the system, observing. Waiting. 3 predators watching 2 others fight over prey, ready to swoop in when both were weakened. 5 minutes. Captain, the Borg are attempting to beam drones directly into the cargo bay, Data reported. I am modulating our shields to prevent transport, but they are adapting rapidly. Slade drew his phaser, checking the charge. If Borg drones made it into the cargo bay, he'd have seconds to respond before they began assimilating everything in sight. Shields at 48%, Worf called out. One of the Klingon vessels has been damaged. They're falling back. 3 minutes. The cargo bay lights flickered as power was diverted to shields and weapons. The dimensional portal apparatus began to hum, building toward activation. Slade could feel reality thinning around the empty space between the concentric rings. A sensation like standing at the edge of a cliff, knowing one wrong step meant falling forever. Portal approaching activation threshold, LaForge shouted over the sound of weapons fire and straining shields. 90 seconds. Borg transport successful. Data announced with the comm of someone reporting catastrophic failure. 3 drones have materialized in the cargo bay. The drones appeared in flashes of sickly green light. Humanoid shapes more machine than flesh, their implants and armor making them walking nightmares. Their pale skin, dead eyes, and mechanical appendages moved with eerie synchronization as they immediately targeted Slade. Resistance is futile, they announced in that horrifying collective voice. You will be assimilated. Your biological and technological distinctiveness will be added to our own. Slade opened fire, his phaser set to maximum. The first shot dropped 1 drone. The Borg hadn't adapted to his specific weapon yet, but the second drone's shields flickered, compensating. The third drone was completely immune by the third shot. Worf charged into the fray, batleth swinging. The Klingon blade bypassed the drone's shields. They'd adapted to energy weapons, but not close combat. One drone's head separated from its shoulders in a spray of mechanical viscera. But more were beaming in. 6, 9, a dozen. 60 seconds. LaForge called. The portal apparatus was screaming now, reality itself protesting the violence being done to its fabric. The empty space between the rings began to shimmer, colors that had no name in this universe bleeding through from somewhere else. Slade backed toward the portal, firing continuously, buying seconds. A drone grabbed his arm, assimilation tubules extending from its hand. He felt them pierce his armor, felt the nanoprobes entering his bloodstream. His healing factor kicked in with savage intensity, his enhanced immune system treating the Borg technology like an infection. The nanoprobes died by the millions, unable to adapt fast enough to his biology. The drone looked almost confused as Slade ripped his arm free and shot it point blank. 30 seconds. Picard was there suddenly, firing his phaser with surgical precision. Data appeared from the other side, his android strength allowing him to literally tear drones apart. The entire senior staff had converged on the cargo bay, forming a defensive line between Slade and the Borg. Go! Picard shouted. When that portal opens, you go, and you don't look back. Captain, that's an order, Mr. Wilson. The portal tore open with a sound like reality screaming. A wound in space-time, showing swirling colors and impossible geometries that hurt to look at. On the other side, Slade could see glimpses of his universe. Familiar constellations, the architecture of his Earth, home. 10 seconds. LaForge's voice was desperate. The power coupling is overloading. 9, 8. More Borg drones beamed in. The defensive line was collapsing. Worf went down under 3 drones, roaring defiance as they tried to assimilate him. Data was surrounded, his superior strength the only thing keeping him from being overwhelmed. 5, 4. Slade made his decision. He turned to the portal, ready to jump through, to leave this universe and these people behind. A child scream. Somewhere in the ship, carried through the chaos by acoustic accident or fate, Slade heard a child screaming. One of the families aboard Enterprise, caught in a section the Borg had reached. He'd saved 6 children at Tavola Minor. Refused to watch them be taken. 3, 2. Slade turned away from the portal. Wilson and O. Picard shouted. But Slade was already moving, charging into the Borg drones with the batleth Worf had dropped. His enhanced speed and strength turned him into a whirlwind of violence, cutting through drones that had adapted to energy weapons but couldn't compensate for sheer berserker rage. He reached the corridor where the scream had come from, finding a family cornered by 2 drones. He destroyed both with brutal efficiency, grabbed the family, and dragged them back toward the cargo bay. 1. Portal destabilizing. The dimensional gateway was collapsing, the energies too unstable to maintain. The wound in reality was closing, and with it, Slade's chance to go home. He got the family through the cargo bay doors, pushed them towards safety, and turned to see the portal shrink to nothing with a final, reality-bending implosion. Silence. The Borg drones stopped advancing, their collective suddenly receiving new tactical data. The cube outside was withdrawing, having calculated that the dimensional anomaly was no longer accessible. The Klingon ships were limping but intact. The Romulans were already warping away, their opportunity lost. And Slade stood in the center of the cargo bay, surrounded by the wreckage of his chance to go home, watching Picard stare at him with an expression of absolute incomprehension. Why? Picard demanded. We had seconds. You could have made it through. Slade looked at the family he'd saved. A father, a mother, 2 children who couldn't have been older than 8. They were crying, terrified, alive. Because, Slade said quietly, some things matter more than going home. The admission felt like ripping out part of his soul. But it was true. He'd changed. This universe, these people, their stubborn idealism and impossible principles, they'd changed him into something he didn't fully recognize. Someone who'd sacrifice his only way home to save strangers. Picard's expression shifted from incomprehension to something that might have been pride. Mr. Data, status of the dimensional portal apparatus? Destroyed, Captain. The power overload fused the primary coupling arrays. We would need to rebuild from scratch, which would require months of work and resources we do not currently possess. Then it seems, Picard said, looking at Slade, that you're staying with us for the foreseeable future, Mr. Wilson. Slade nodded slowly. The weight of that reality settling over him like armor he'd worn so long it had become part of his skin. He was stranded, permanently, for all practical purposes, in a universe that didn't want people like him, with people who just risked everything to give him a chance they knew he might not take. I'm sorry you're stuck with me, Captain. I suspect, Picard said with the ghost of a smile, that we'll find a way to manage. 6 weeks after the failed portal attempt, Slade Wilson sat in 10 Forward, Enterprise's civilian lounge, nursing a synthahol beverage that tasted like whiskey but lacked the bite. Through the wide viewports, he watched stars streak past at warp speed as the ship continued its exploration mission through the Gamma Hydra sector. He'd been given permanent guest quarters, conditional access to most ship systems, a security clearance that Worf had authorized with extreme reluctance and Data had approved with logical necessity. He wasn't crew, wasn't Starfleet, wasn't anything except a permanent fixture that everyone was still figuring out how to categorize. The door chimed behind him. Guinan, the enigmatic bartender who ran 10 Forward with the quiet authority of someone who'd seen civilizations rise and fall. She set a fresh drink beside him without asking. You've been sitting here for 3 hours, she observed, settling into the chair across from him. That's either deep contemplation or wallowing. Which is it? Can it be both? Guinan's smile was knowing. In my experience, when someone gives up their only chance to go home, they're either running from something or running towards something. You don't strike me as someone who runs from anything. Slade studied the ageless woman. Picard trusted her implicitly, and in 6 weeks, Slade had learned that Picard's trust was not easily given. What if I told you I don't know what I was running toward? That I acted on instinct, and now I'm stuck living with the consequences? I'd say welcome to the rest of us. Nobody really knows what they're doing. We're all just making our best guess and hoping it works out. Guinan gestured to the viewport. You've been given something rare, Mr. Wilson. A chance to reinvent yourself in a place where nobody knows your history, your mistakes, your failures. That's terrifying and liberating in equal measure. Before Slade could respond, Worf entered 10 Forward with the purposeful stride of someone on a mission. The Klingon spotted Slade and changed trajectory, joining them at the table. Wilson, the captain requires your presence in the observation lounge. There has been a development. Slade exchanged glances with Guinan, who simply raised an eyebrow. A development, in Worf's vocabulary, could mean anything from a diplomatic crisis to another assassination attempt. The observation lounge was full when Slade arrived. The entire senior staff plus Commander Chfran via view screen from Starfleet Science, and surprisingly, Commander Karg of House Morith appearing via secure Klingon channel. Whatever this was, it involved multiple jurisdictions. Mr. Wilson, thank you for joining us, Picard said, gesturing to an empty seat. We've received a proposal that concerns you directly. Let me guess, someone else wants to recruit, capture, or dissect me. Not exactly. Picard pulled up a display showing a star chart with multiple highlighted systems. Starfleet Command, in consultation with the Klingon High Council and, surprisingly, the Romulan Senate, has reached a consensus regarding your status. Slade's instincts prickled. When 3 interstellar powers agreed on anything, it usually meant someone was getting shafted. What kind of consensus? Chfran spoke from her view screen, her Vulcan features betraying no emotion. After extensive analysis of the incidents involving your presence, Tavila Minor, the Borg encounter, the Romulan extraction attempts, Starfleet intelligence has concluded that you represent a unique tactical asset. However, your lack of official status creates legal and diplomatic complications. So they want to give me official status, Slade said, reading between the lines. In a manner of speaking, Picard pulled up another document. You're being offered a position as a civilian tactical consultant assigned to Enterprise under my authority. You would not be Starfleet personnel, which means you're not bound by regulations like the Prime Directive. However, you would be subject to Federation law and my direct command when aboard this vessel. A mercenary with a security clearance, Slade said flatly. A consultant with specialized expertise, Picard corrected. There's a significant difference. Commander Karg's image leaned forward. Additionally, House Morith formally extends an offer of alliance. You would retain your Federation consultant status while also being recognized as an ally of the Klingon Empire. When circumstances require less diplomatic solutions, you could operate under Klingon authority instead. Slade processed this. They were creating a unique position, someone who could move between Federation idealism and Klingon pragmatism as situations demanded. Someone who could do what needed doing while letting the official powers maintain plausible deniability. You're making me Section 31, but with actual oversight, Slade said. We are offering you purpose, Fran replied. You have demonstrated tactical competence and, unexpectedly, ethical judgment. The galaxy faces threats that do not respond to diplomacy or logic. The Borg, the Dominion in the Gamma Quadrant, rogue elements like the Orion Syndicate. Someone with your capabilities, operating with proper authorization but outside normal chains of command, could prove invaluable. And if I refuse? Picard's expression grew serious. Then you remain aboard Enterprise as an indefinite guest, unable to return home, unable to contribute beyond informal consultation. Mr. Wilson, I won't lie to you. This arrangement benefits us considerably, but I believe it benefits you as well. You need purpose, direction, something beyond simply surviving until we might find another way to send you home. Slade looked around the table, Data watching with curious intensity, LaForge looking hopeful, Worf radiating approval. Even Dr. Crusher was present, her medical expertise apparently relevant to whatever they were planning. What would this position actually entail? Slade asked. That depends on the situation, Picard said. Sometimes it might mean tactical consultation during ship operations. Sometimes it might mean deploying to handle threats Starfleet cannot officially engage. You would have autonomy to refuse assignments you find ethically unacceptable, but when you accept a mission, you answer to me. Clear command structure, clear accountability. And the Klingon alliance? Slade looked at Karg's image. House Morith would provide resources, intelligence, and extraction support when needed, the Klingon commander explained. In exchange, you would occasionally assist with matters of honor that require someone operating outside Klingon High Council politics. We value your combat prowess and tactical mind. Use them in our service, and we will ensure you have everything you need to be effective. It was a better offer than Slade had expected. Purpose without servitude. Authority without chains. The ability to operate in both the idealistic Federation and the pragmatic Klingon sphere as situations demanded. There is one additional element, France said. Dr. Crusher has been studying your enhanced physiology. She believes she can restore your healing factor to full capacity by filtering the quantum radiation through a controlled cellular regeneration process. The procedure would take approximately 3 weeks and carries minimal risk. Slade looked at Crusher, who nodded confirmation. Your healing factor has been operating at reduced efficiency since you arrived. I can fix that. Get you back to baseline. Maybe even slightly improved given how your cells have adapted to this universe's quantum state. His edge, the thing that had kept him alive through countless missions. They were offering to restore it, strengthen it, make him whole again. Why? Slade asked. Why invest this much effort in someone who's not even from your universe? Picard stood, moving to the observation lounge's windows. Because you gave up your chance to go home to save a family you didn't know. Because when given the choice between self-interest and protecting others, you chose others. That's not the decision of a mercenary or an assassin, Mr. Wilson. That's the decision of someone who, perhaps despite themselves, has principles worth nurturing. The captain believes people can change, Riker added. He's right more often than he's wrong. Slade stood, moving to join Picard at the window. Outside, the stars continued their eternal dance, indifferent to the struggles of the beings that tried to map their mysteries. If I accept this, Slade said quietly, I'm admitting I'm not going home. That this is my life now. Would that be so terrible? Picard asked. You've proven yourself capable of more than violence. You've demonstrated tactical brilliance, ethical judgment under pressure, and the capacity for self-sacrifice. Those qualities are rare, Mr. Wilson, in any universe. Slade thought about the past 6 weeks. The training sessions with Worf that had become less about evaluation and more about mutual respect. The conversations with Data about what it meant to be more than your programming. The children at Tavola Minor who were alive because he'd chosen action over protocol. He thought about his old universe, the endless contracts, the moral compromises, the isolation of being a weapon everyone wanted but nobody trusted. Was that really worth returning to? I have conditions, Slade said finally. Name them, Picard replied. 1. I maintain autonomy to refuse any mission I find ethically unacceptable. No pressure, no guilt trips, no for the greater good manipulation. Agreed. 2. If you ever find another way to send me home, you let me know immediately. No hiding it because I've become too useful. You have my word. 3. Worf continues training me. If I'm going to operate in this universe, I need to understand how warriors here think, fight, survive. Worf grunted approval. I would have insisted on that regardless. And 4. Slade turned from the window to face the entire assembly. No secrets. If Section 31 or any other shadow organization comes calling, you tell me. I won't be manipulated by people who think they know better than everyone else. That one might prove challenging, Fran observed. Section 31 operates outside official oversight by design. Then they'll learn to operate outside my sphere, or we'll have problems. Slade's tone left no room for negotiation. Picard extended his hand. Welcome to Enterprise, Mr. Wilson. Officially this time. Slade shook the offered hand, feeling the weight of the decision settle over him. He was committing to this universe, these people, this impossible experiment in optimistic exploration and principled conflict. I'm going to disappoint you, Slade said. Eventually. I'm not built for idealism. And I'm going to challenge you to be better than you believe possible, Picard countered. That's how this works. Over the next hour, they hammered out the specifics. Living arrangements, security clearances, communication protocols with House Morath, medical procedures for restoring his healing factor. By the time Slade left the observation lounge, he had a PADD full of documentation and a headache from bureaucratic complexity. Worf caught him in the corridor. Wilson, a moment. They walked in silence toward the holodeck, Worf's presence solid and uncomplicated beside him. You made the right choice, the Klingon said finally. A warrior without purpose is already dead. Now you have purpose. To be Starfleet's attack dog when diplomacy fails. To be what you have always been, a soldier who fights for something worth fighting for. The difference is, now you know what that something is. Worf paused at the holodeck entrance. In Klingon culture, we have a saying, Dabu Klidii YSUV, when threatened, fight. You have been fighting your entire life, Wilson. Perhaps here, you can choose what you fight for instead of who pays you to fight. The holodeck doors opened, revealing a Klingon combat arena. Worf tossed him a bat'leth with casual strength. Come, we train. And this time, I will not hold back. They fought for an hour, two warriors finding honesty in violence, respect in matched skill. When they finished, both exhausted and bleeding from minor cuts, Slade felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Peace, purpose, the sense of belonging to something larger than himself. 3 months later, Slade stood on the bridge during a diplomatic mission to Rigel 7, officially serving as tactical consultant to the captain. An Orion Syndicate operation had been disrupted the week before. Details classified, but Worf's satisfied expression suggested Slade's first official mission had gone well. The view screen showed the planet rotating below, a world in transition from pre-warp to warp-capable, caught in the exact moment the Prime Directive made first contact permissible. What do you think, Mr. Wilson? Picard asked. Should we make contact today, or wait for their warp program to complete? Slade studied the planet, noting the political divisions, the military buildup, the tensions that could erupt into conflict at any moment. 6 months ago, he would have seen a powder keg. Now he saw possibility. Give them time, Slade said. They're not ready for the galaxy. But they will be. Some things can't be rushed. Picard smiled. Spoken like someone learning patience. Don't get used to it, Captain. I'm still me. I wouldn't want it any other way, Mr. Wilson. That's exactly why you're here. As Enterprise moved away from Rigel 7, continuing its mission of exploration and discovery, Slade Wilson found himself thinking about the family he'd saved during the portal incident. They'd sent him a message thanking him, explaining how their children drew pictures of the scary soldier who saved us. He'd kept the pictures, hung them in his quarters where he could see them, reminders that he wasn't just a weapon anymore. That he could be more than his training, his enhancements, his history. In the observation lounge later that evening, Guinan found him staring at those pictures. Having second thoughts? She asked. No. Just adjusting. This universe keeps surprising me. Wait until you meet the Q. Guinan said with a knowing smile. Then you'll understand just how strange things can get. Slade laughed, a genuine sound that surprised him. I look forward to it. And he meant it. For the first time in his life, Slade Wilson was looking forward to the future instead of just surviving it. Whatever came next, Borg attacks, diplomatic crises, shadow organization manipulations, or just the routine dangers of exploring the unknown, he would face it with people who saw him as more than a tool. People who'd given him something worth fighting for. A second chance. The dimensional refugee who'd appeared through a quantum fissure had become something unexpected. Not Starfleet, not quite civilian, but something in between. A bridge between idealism and pragmatism, between the Federation's principles and the galaxy's harsh realities. Slade Wilson would continue to challenge Picard's beliefs, test Starfleet's limits, and operate in the shadows where others couldn't or wouldn't go. But he would do so with purpose, with accountability, and with the quiet satisfaction of knowing he'd chosen this path instead of having it chosen for him. The Enterprise sailed on through unexplored space, carrying among its crew a warrior from another universe who'd learned that strength wasn't just about winning fights. It was about knowing which battles were worth fighting in the first place. And in the distance, across dimensional barriers that remained impossibly thin, the quantum signature of Slade's home universe continued to pulse. Faint, perhaps forever out of reach, but present. A reminder that some doors, once closed, might one day open again. But for now, Slade Wilson had found something more valuable than a way home. He'd found a reason to stay. Live long and prosper. Hit that subscribe button for more interesting stories.